Chapter 108. Currently, there were only 5 forces left on the Blood Mist Island, and the Triad was one of them. This alliance was made up of 3 forces. Before the arrival of the second heavenly collapse, the strongest forces of the Yushu clan all went up the mountain, which made them a little anxious. They also guessed that there was something fishy, but their respective forces were not enough to fight against the monsters on the mountain. In the end, they decided to join forces and form an alliance to fight against the monsters. Facts proved that their decision was very wise. Today, they were also besieged by more than 10 monsters. Fortunately, they had a lot of people. Although they suffered heavy casualties, they had already killed more than half of the monsters. Seeing that victory was in front of them, their morale was greatly boosted, and they all gave it their all. However, at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Only a few people noticed it, but they all thought that their eyes were playing tricks on them, so they did not pay too much attention. But what everyone didn't expect was that a demonic beast followed closely behind, and it was a rank 2 demonic beast. This was naturally the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile that was chasing after Lang Shiqi. Lang Shiqi originally planned to escape directly, but he accidentally came to the Triad, so he thought of a way to lure the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile over. After he came here, he immediately drilled into the ground and sank deep, afraid that the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile would find his aura. When the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile rushed over, it suddenly lost Lang Shiqi's figure and became even more furious. It immediately roared towards the sky. Its roar that contained anger immediately attracted everyone's attention. At this moment, whether it was the cultivators of the Triad or the rank 1 monsters, they were all intimidated by the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's roar. The blood in the eyes of the rank 1 monsters became denser, and the cultivators of the Triad were all ashen, not knowing what to do. Originally, these rank 1 monsters had already caused them to suffer heavy casualties, but now, a rank 2 monster suddenly appeared. Especially the Alliance Master of Triad, Extreme Evil. When he felt the terrifying aura of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, even with his cultivation at the 6th level of the pure spirit realm, he broke out in cold sweat, let alone the others. To the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, since it couldn't find the person who injured it, as long as it was a human, it would tear them apart. The silver-scaled fire-armored alligator arched its body and shot out like a sharp arrow. It was like a tiger entering a flock of sheep. In the blink of an eye, it tore several people into pieces. Instantly, blood splattered everywhere. Seeing this scene, who would still dare to fight it? The sudden appearance of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile broke the psychological defense of the crowd. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 people fled. Extreme Evil immediately raged. Idiots, a bunch of idiots. The faster you run, the faster you die. As soon as these people fled, the Tier 1 demonic beasts that were originally suppressed went berserk in the blink of an eye. It was hard to suppress them anymore. The entire battle seemed to be in a state of complete defeat. Extreme Evil watched as his subordinates died one after another. Especially those who fled. How could they outrun the demonic beasts? Instead, they died even faster. However, Extreme Evil still didn't give up. He shouted, "Don't hold back anymore. Use all your trump cards. Who knows, you might still have a chance." After saying that, Extreme Evil slid out an icy blue needle from his sleeve and shot it out. The speed of the ice needle was extremely fast. It just happened to catch the moment the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile stopped and shot it. The moment the ice needle reached the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, it didn't pierce into it. Instead, it strangely turned into a shocking cold air and swallowed it. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body was suddenly covered with a layer of ice. Furthermore, the ice was getting thicker and thicker, sealing it in ice. At the same time, the 2 people beside Extreme Evil also took out 2 items with a pained expression. One was a light crossbow. On the light crossbow were 2 crossbow bolts, one black and one white. When the crossbow bolts were shot, they actually intertwined with each other in midair and turned into a black and white light beam. The other person took out an oval-shaped container. He threw the container into midair. Numerous colorful little insects scattered out from the container and crawled towards the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was currently sealed in ice. However, a layer of faint silver flame suddenly emerged from its body. The ice on the surface of its body began to melt rapidly. It seemed to have sensed a threat and tried its best to move its body a little. PFFF. In the end, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile moved a little. That black and white crossbow bolt pierced into the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's lower abdomen. Immediately after, the two opposing forces suddenly exploded. In the blink of an eye, a large area of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's scales exploded, revealing the flesh underneath. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile wanted to howl in pain, but the layer of ice on its head still sealed it in ice. It could only barely open its mouth, but no sound came out. Right after the explosion, hundreds of little insects crawled onto its body. Many of them directly drilled into its body through the wound on its lower abdomen and mercilessly tore apart its flesh. Roar! Bang! The silver flame on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body suddenly surged and instantly melted all the ice crystals. The silver flame was still incessantly burning those little insects on its body. The corpses of the insects fell down in batches. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's pair of blood-red eyes stared at Extreme Evil and the other two. Its eyes flickered with a crazy killing intent. At this moment, Extreme Evil and the other two's hearts were already dead. They had joined hands and used their strongest trump card, but they still couldn't do anything to the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. They knew that this was not something they could deal with. Sigh, run, run. Run as many as you can. Extreme Evil sighed deeply. It was as if he had used up all his strength to finish this sentence. Even he, the alliance leader, had spoken. This time, no one dared to stay. The dozens of people immediately scattered like birds and beasts. The rest was a massacre by the demonic beasts. After a moment, this place had become a scene of carnage. Fresh blood dyed the ground red. Broken limbs were everywhere. The remaining few demonic beasts, including the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, were excitedly eating. At this moment, the scales on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body had returned to its original state. Moreover, it looked a little weak. Just as it was replenishing its strength, the ground under its feet suddenly softened. Immediately, a huge fist with an incomparably turbulent force drilled out from the ground and hit the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's lower abdomen. Bang! A loud sound rang out. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was directly blasted into the air by this punch. Traces of fishy blood flowed out from its mouth. At the place where the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was standing just now, there was an additional figure. This person's appearance was clearly that of a 12 or 13-year-old youth. However, he was as tall as an adult. Moreover, his entire body was bulging with bulging muscles. A tyrannical aura was emitted from his body. A faint trace of blood-red light appeared in his eyes. This person was naturally Lang Shiqi, who had activated the Beast Origin battle pattern. In the next moment, Lang Shiqi instantly disappeared. When they looked again, he had already appeared behind the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. Another punch landed. Chapter 109. Thanks to my book friends, Not by Xiao Jun, for their recommendation, and Cute Gugugu and Pomegranate Mama for their support. Lang Shiqi, who had activated the Beast Origin battle pattern, attacked with another tiger wave-stomping fist on its back. With a boom, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was smashed into the ground by a huge force, creating a large crater. The scales on its back were also cracked. Lang Shiqi was still in the air. He held the sword in his right hand and the spear in his left hand. With a shake of the spear, he drew a huge cross in the air and fiercely stabbed down. At the same time, he pointed his spirit sword and a faint blue pattern flashed on the blade. Then Lang Shiqi turned into several afterimages and stabbed down. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was hit by the tiger wave-stomping fist twice in a row. Although the external force didn't cause much damage to it, the internal force that rushed into its body was constantly destroying its bones and meridians, making it unable to get up for a while. At this moment, the heavy cross spear accurately stabbed into the back of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, completely tearing apart its defense. Almost at the same time, several invisible sword chi surged out and entered its body from the wound, instantly sealing all the spirit power in its abdomen. After the sword chi, there were several sharp sword rays. With a pu sound, the wound on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's abdomen was already open and blood was flowing out. The silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile roared in extreme pain, and a layer of silver flames appeared all over its body. Leng Shiqi already knew it would be like this. After using chaotic blossom lust, he continuously retreated. Immediately, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile crazily rushed over. Even the other rank 1 monsters rushed over and completely surrounded Leng Shiqi. But Leng Shiqi didn't panic and immediately changed his sword for a saber. As several monstrous beasts pounced on him, he softly spat out 2 words, "Ice spread." In an instant, a thick chill rose from Leng Shiqi's feet. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into a layer of ice and quickly spread out. Those rank 1 demonic beasts were instantly frozen after coming into contact with the ice. However, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body emitted silver flames. When the ice surged up and came into contact with the flames, it melted. Sizzling sounds were unceasingly heard, and a thick fog was emitted. Leng Shiqi knew that this bit of ice wouldn't be able to seal the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile, but he didn't plan on sealing it. He just wanted the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile to keep burning with silver flames. This was because he had discovered that the silver-scaled fire-armored alligator's spirit force and physical strength were rapidly being consumed when the silver flames burned. Most importantly, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's defense was at its weakest at this moment. With the help of the thick water vapor, Leng Shiqi displayed the ghost parade and confusion footwork to the extreme. In a few flashes, he appeared behind the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. Immediately, a magnificent crescent saber aura suddenly appeared, dispersing all the water vapor. At the same time, it completely engulfed the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. And Leng Shiqi still attacked the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's wound. After 2 breaths, the saber aura dissipated. Leng Shiqi's saber was deeply embedded in the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body, almost cutting it in half. However, Leng Shiqi was still not at ease. He withdrew his saber and punched the tiger-treading wave fist on the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's back. He also used the rebound force to retreat. After retreating, Leng Shiqi quickly formed seals and pulled his arms. A large amount of blood flew out from the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's wound and gathered in the air. After a dozen breaths, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile finally staggered and fell to the ground, no longer breathing. Seeing this scene, Leng Shiqi secretly sighed in relief. He also stopped the seals in his hand and changed to another kind of seal. Then his body slowly returned to its original state, followed by a strong sense of fatigue and soreness that swept through his body. Leng Shiqi's face instantly turned pale. He staggered and almost lost his balance. He hurriedly took out a few pills and swallowed them. Only then did he feel a little better. But at this time, the ice crystals on the other rank 1 monsters began to crack, and more cracks appeared. It looked like they were about to break out of the ice. Leng Shiqi snorted softly and immediately flashed out with the spirit sword in his hand. Then there was an endless crack sound. This was not the sound of the monsters breaking out of the ice, but the sound of Leng Shiqi killing the monsters with the ice crystals. In less than 5 minutes, all the rank 1 monsters were dead. Leng Shiqi's forehead was covered in a layer of cold sweat. Then he arrived next to the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's body and stabbed it into its head. A light silver monster core was taken out, and Leng Shiqi's face immediately lit up. In today's battle, he had deeply experienced the terror of the Beast Origin battle pattern. Not only did it provide Leng Shiqi with a huge amount of power, but it also gave him a powerful burst of power. Without the Beast Origin battle pattern, it would have been impossible for him to kill the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. According to the demonic Beast Origin method, once he reached the spirit transformation realm, he would be able to refine the Beast Origin battle pattern again. Leng Shiqi was looking forward to it because the monster core of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile was likely to be refined into a Beast Origin battle pattern that could increase his defense. However, now was not the time for him to look forward to the future. After he looked around and saw that there was no one around, he sank into the ground and began to recover his spirit energy. After he recovered his spirit energy, he collected the blood of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile and the other monsters and sold the corpses to the system. Finally, he fumbled his way back to the Wushu clan's camp. When Leng Shiqi returned, what he saw was also a hellish scene. At this time, the Wushu clan's camp was already in a mess. Blood had already dyed the ground red, and there were corpses everywhere. There were both spirit cultivators and monsters. Moreover, there was an aura of death everywhere. Even those who had survived were all lifeless. Lang Shiqi scanned the corpses of the monsters and counted a total of 13. Seeing that the monsters were completely annihilated, he felt relieved. However, the Yushu clan situation was not good. Originally, there were more than 100 people in the clan, but now, there were only 40 to 50 people left. In this battle, more than half of the people were sacrificed. Almost all of the remaining people were injured, and there were even a few who were on the verge of death. It was unknown if they could be saved. Seeing that Lang Shiqi had returned, everyone looked at him gratefully. If he had not lured the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile away, they did not know how many of them would have survived. At this time, Yushu, who was covered in injuries, was still trying his best to comfort everyone and instruct them to deal with the corpses. Seeing that Lang Shiqi had returned, he felt relieved and nodded at him. Lang Shiqi did not say anything and directly went forward to help everyone deal with the battlefield. This time they finally made it through. Chapter 110. In the blink of an eye, it had been 3 months since the last siege of the demonic beasts. Although there were some waves and tribulations in these 3 months, everyone's strength was rapidly increasing and they managed to survive. Of course, casualties were still inevitable. Currently, the Blood Fog Island only had the Yushu clan, the Blood Moon, the Seiji, and the Qingyan League. The total number of people in these 4 forces was only a little more than 100. From more than 10,000 people to more than 100 people now, only a year and a half had passed. The Yushu clan had the most people among the 4 forces. After the battle 3 months ago, although the Yushu clan only had a little more than 40 people left, they had also accepted some people from the triad. After another 3 months of losses, there were still more than 40 people left. At this time, the Yushu clan's camp was no longer at the foot of the mountain, but halfway up the mountain. This was because the blood firmament had been slowly shrinking all this time. The area below the foot of the mountain had long disappeared. If this continued, it wouldn't be long before they had nowhere to go. From the halfway up the mountain, there was only the mysterious blood tower left. People from various forces had gone to check it and found out that the blood tower was actually very huge. Although it only had 5 floors, it was at least 200 to 300 feet high. Moreover, there was a door on all 4 sides of the blood fog tower, but the shape of each door was not the same. No one knew the purpose of each door. It was a pity that the blood tower was surrounded by a huge bloodlight screen, so they couldn't investigate it at close range. However, everyone also discovered that this bloodlight screen was gradually fading. They believed that it wouldn't be long before it dissipated. This also meant that when the blood firmament at the outermost layer became smaller and smaller, they would have to enter the blood tower. Perhaps this blood-red tower was their final test. At this time, in the Yushu clan's temporary camp, other than a few people patrolling, everyone else was diligently cultivating. Moreover, as far as the eye could see, everyone's cultivation was at the pure spirit realm. Now, the spirit chi on Bloodmist Island was so rich that it could be touched with one's hand. As long as one's aptitude was passable, all of them had broken through to the pure spirit realm. In fact, most of them were at the middle stage of the pure spirit realm. As for Hua Lingling Mu 21, and Blood is no different, the oldest batch of pure spirit realm spirit cultivators, they were all at the late stage of the pure spirit realm. As for Lang Shiqi and Yushu, their cultivations were shockingly already at the peak of the 9th level of the pure spirit realm. However, the 2 of them didn't feel that their cultivation speed was fast at all. Because just a few days ago, they had received news that Delta Origi had broken through to the spirit transformation realm. The news of the Delta Origi breaking through to the spirit transformation realm spread like wildfire. It was as if there was a mountain pressing down on everyone's hearts. Especially for those who were at the late stage of the pure spirit realm, it was a huge blow. They knew best that the more they cultivated, the more difficult it was to advance. Just the bottleneck of the 8th and 9th level of the pure spirit realm was enough to block them. When they thought that someone had actually broken through to the spirit transformation realm, they felt that their hard work and cultivation was all for naught in the end. In the end, everyone could only attribute Delta Origi's breakthrough to her heaven-defying aptitude. This was the so-called comparisons are odious. However, only Lang Shiqi knew that the reason why Delta Origi was able to break through to the spirit transformation realm so quickly was not only because of her superb cultivation aptitude, but also because she possessed a rank 4 cultivation method. That rank 4 cultivation method was obtained from the puppet battle in the wetland. This was the answer that Lang Shiqi had exchanged with information later. Delta Origi's breakthrough also brought him a lot of pressure. It has to be said that Lang Shiqi had not slacked off in his cultivation for the past 3 months. Moreover, he had never stopped consuming pills and spirit stones. In addition, he would refine a mass of monster blood every few days. He had broken through from the 8th level of the pure spirit realm to the 9th level with the help of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's monster blood. Otherwise, it would have taken him more than 10 days to break through. In fact, Lang Shiqi was already at the peak of the pure spirit realm a month ago. However, because he had relied on external help to break through, when he touched the barrier of the spirit transformation realm, he knew that his foundation was a little unstable. If he did not properly purify his spirit force, he was afraid that he would not be able to break through to the spirit transformation realm for a long time. Therefore, in the following month, he had been purifying his spirit force, causing Yushu's cultivation to gradually catch up with him. On this day, Lang Shiqi looked inwardly at the spirit force in his sea of qi. Every strand of spirit force was incomparably pure, and he finally smiled. It took me a whole month to finally purify all my spirit force to the extreme. Fortunately, nothing too dangerous happened this month. Lang Shiqi whispered to himself. Then Lang Shiqi took out a fist-sized crystal ball from the system space. His eyes flashed with excitement and anticipation. This crystal ball was one of the rewards from the spiritual ruins. It was also the best reward that Lang Shiqi felt was the experience ball. If something like the experience ball was used in the game, it could directly give a large amount of experience to level up. If it was used in the real world, it would give a huge amount of spirit force. This was the kind of spirit force that could directly increase one's cultivation. Moreover, it was exceptionally pure, so there was no need to worry about leaving any hidden dangers. Lang Shiqi had not used this thing until now because he wanted to break through to the spirit transformation realm. That's right, Lang Shiqi was preparing to break through to the next realm, the spirit transformation realm. In the cultivation system, the pure spirit realm was a realm that opened up the spirit force in the sea of qi. The spirit transformation realm was the process of turning the spirit force in the sea of qi into mist, and the mist into the sea. In order to break through from the pure spirit realm to the spirit transformation realm, the spirit force in the body must be condensed into mist. Lang Shiqi cultivated 2 rank 3 cultivation methods at the same time, so he knew that there were 2 ways to break through. The method recorded in the demonic beast technique was more violent. It was to directly compress the sea of qi and turn it into mist to break through. Although this was simple, the process was very dangerous. If one was not careful, it would cause the sea of qi to become turbulent. In the most serious case, the sea of qi would collapse, causing one's cultivation to fall back to the spirit gathering realm. The other rank 3 cultivation method, Moonlight Cloud Codex, had a more smooth method. Lang Shiqi thought about it and decided to play it safe and use the method of the Moonlight Cloud Codex to break through. After all, the spirit force in the experience ball in his hand was very large and very pure. There was no need for him to take the risk. Since he had decided, Lang Shiqi immediately adjusted his state and crushed the experience ball. Immediately after, the experience ball instantly turned into a huge ball of spirit qi that gently wrapped Lang Shiqi. Lang Shiqi suddenly felt countless gentle spirit qi coming from his limbs and bones, making his whole body feel very comfortable. Lang Shiqi smoothly mobilized this spirit qi to break through the bottleneck of the spirit transformation realm again and again. During the process of breaking through this time, Lang Shiqi did not feel a lot of pain. Instead, the process was quite smooth. About an hour later, Lang Shiqi's body vaguely made a sound as if something had broken. Immediately, Lang Shiqi's aura suddenly surged and the ink-flowing clothes on his body began to move. Waves of invisible spiritual pressure spread out, setting off bursts of wind and waves. Lang Shiqi abruptly opened his eyes, and 2 dazzling lights flashed through them. His cultivation was already at the spirit transformation realm. Chapter 111. Lang Shiqi gently clenched his fist, feeling the majestic power in his body, and finally laughed. Breaking through to the spirit transformation realm at this critical moment gave him more confidence to survive. At this moment, a line of words appeared before his eyes. The system is about to be upgraded. It will take 3 natural days. During the upgrade, the system will not be available. Seeing this message, Lang Shiqi suddenly realized that he had not drawn a prize for a long time. The last time he had drawn a prize was when he was preparing to deal with the Beilichuan and the others' joint attack. Moreover, after a long period of accumulation, Lang Shiqi now had more than 500 system coins. However, he had not used them for the lucky draw because the basic prizes were not very useful to him. He still had a certain level of expectation for the system upgrade this time. He hoped that after the upgrade, there would be a higher level of lucky draw, and he also looked forward to the opening of some subsidiary system. After all, the system backpack that appeared after the last system upgrade was a great help to him. Not only could it store a large amount of resources, but it also gave him great flexibility in battle. 3 days. Let's wait. There's something I need to do anyway. Lang Shiqi softly muttered to himself. Then, he continued to sit cross-legged and took out a light silver monster core from the system space. This was the monster core of the rank 2 monster, the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. Lang Shiqi planned to fuse the Beast Origin Battle Rune again. After breaking through to the Spirit Transformation Realm, he could fuse one more Beast Origin Battle Rune. This way, he would have more choices. With the previous experience, Lang Shiqi knew that fusing the Beast Origin Battle Rune had a high requirement for the strength of his body. Therefore, he had been practicing the 8 Stones horizontal training technique for the past 3 months. At this time, his body was comparable to a spirit cultivator at the 9th level of the spirit gathering realm. In addition, Lang Shiqi was now at the spirit transformation realm. Fusing the Beast Origin Battle Rune would not be as dangerous as last time. Then, Lang Shiqi swallowed the monster core of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. As soon as the demonic core entered his mouth, it turned into countless faint silver light spots and merged into his flesh and blood. Bursts of heart-wrenching pain instantly spread throughout his body. Fortunately, his physical body was relatively strong, and he began to mobilize the majestic spirit energy in his body to nourish his flesh and blood. The pain was still within the acceptable range of Lang Shiqi. Gradually, Lang Shiqi outlined the outline of a demon beast from his neck to his lower abdomen. As time passed, the pattern became clearer and clearer, finally forming the shape of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. At this moment, Lang Shiqi's body suddenly emitted a silver brilliance. The brilliance grew and covered his entire body in the blink of an eye. After 2 breaths of time, the light dissipated. Lang Shiqi's body was covered in silver, as if he had been painted with a layer of silver paint. It looked a little strange. Lang Shiqi took off his ink-flowing robe and looked down. It turned out that it wasn't that he was covered in silver, but that every inch of his skin was covered in a layer of thin silver scales. Lang Shiqi casually touched it and felt like he was touching armor. Then he took out a dagger and stabbed at his left arm. However, the dagger only created a burst of sparks when it hit the scales, and the scales were not damaged at all. Oh, it's actually so hard. Lang Shiqi raised his eyebrows in pleasant surprise. It has to be said that his dagger was a rank 2 spirit treasure. Although he didn't use much spirit force, it could easily cut through metal and stone. Lang Shiqi smiled with satisfaction. This way, I have the flexibility of the flowing ink robe on the outside and the hardness of the scales on the inside. Ordinary attacks won't be able to hurt me. Then Lang Shiqi removed the Beast Origin battle pattern and put on the flowing ink robe. After adjusting his state, he began to consolidate his cultivation at the Spirit Transformation Realm. Breaking through to the Spirit Transformation Realm and condensing the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's Beast Origin battle pattern had greatly increased his strength, but he had to constantly improve his strength. The stronger he became, the greater his chance of surviving until the end. One day later, a respectful voice came from outside his tent. "My lord, the gang leader invites you over." Lang Shiqi stopped cultivating after hearing this. He let out a sigh of relief and said, "I know." At the same time, there was a trace of doubt in his heart. What is it? However, he didn't rush out. He closed his eyes and made a strange gesture. Then his aura gradually weakened. When he opened his eyes, his aura had returned to the 9th layer of the pure spirit realm. It was Lang Shiqi who had used the aura concealing spell to hide his cultivation. Then Lang Shiqi walked out of the tent with some doubt. The moment he walked out of the tent, Ziyu obediently flew to his shoulder. When Lang Shiqi was cultivating, he would send Ziyu to guard him. He walked into Yushu's tent with Ziyu. At this moment, only Yushu was inside the tent. He was pacing back and forth as if he was hesitating about something. When he saw Lang Shiqi come in, he handed over a piece of cloth with some words written on it. It looked like a letter. Yushu said anxiously, "This is a letter sent by the leader of the Qingyan League. Take a look." Lang Shiqi hadn't seen Yushu so anxious in a long time. He knew that something was wrong, so he read the letter. Then Lang Shiqi frowned. This letter was written in Qingyan's tone. The first sentence directly told them that Qingyan had broken through to the spirit transformation realm. How is this possible? Lang Shiqi was secretly shocked. Delta Origi was the first to break through to the spirit transformation realm because of her talent and rank 4 cultivation method. Lang Shiqi knew that he had relied on external help to break through to the spirit transformation realm. He also knew how difficult it was to break through to the spirit transformation realm. He had interacted with Qingyan a few times recently. The last time he saw him, he was only at the 9th layer of the pure spirit realm, a bit weaker than Yushu. How long had it been since then? How could he suddenly break through to the spirit transformation realm? However, since Qingyan had said so, he couldn't be lying. Cultivation was something that couldn't be hidden. There was only one explanation, and that was that Qingyan had also relied on external help to enter the spirit transformation realm. During this period of time, he must have obtained some extremely precious heavenly material and earthly treasure. After thinking about it, Lang Shiqi felt that this was very likely. At the same time, he felt a bit lucky that he had broken through in time. It didn't take long for Lang Shiqi to finish reading the letter. The main content of the letter was that Qingyan wanted to invite the leaders of the various factions to a gathering to discuss the Blood Tower. The Blood Tower was a big problem that everyone couldn't avoid. Qingyan inviting everyone to discuss and share information was indeed a good thing for everyone. However, from the tone of the letter, it seemed that Qingyan had put himself in a leading position. What do you think? Yushu's voice came at the right time. Lang Shiqi pondered for a moment and said, "We have to go." Yushu said, "Yes, but Qingyan's goal is obviously not that simple. I also specifically asked about this person. Do you know that the Qingyan League was originally made up of several factions? At first, it wasn't called the Qingyan League, but it soon became his Qingyan League. It can be seen that not only is this person ambitious, but he also has a lot of methods. Especially since he has broken through to the spirit transformation realm. If we go, I'm afraid we won't have much say." So what if he's in the spirit transformation realm? Sometimes cultivation doesn't represent strength. Agree and we'll go together. Lang Shiqi's eyes lit up. Chapter 112. The next day, Lang Shiqi and Yushu brought 10 people to the meeting place. This place was close to the Crimson Tower and far away from the other factions, so they didn't have to worry about it. After all, these 4 factions had clashed with each other more than once or twice. Their accumulated hatred had reached a point where it was difficult to resolve. If it wasn't for the Crimson Tower hanging over their heads, they wouldn't be sitting together peacefully. When they arrived, Lang Shiqi saw a round table in the distance. 4 people were already seated there. One of them was smiling and saying something, but the others all had serious expressions and didn't seem to have any intention of speaking. When they saw Lang Shiqi and Yushu arrive, a young man in a blue robe stood up and walked over. This was the leader of the Qingyan League and the organizer of this meeting, Qingyan. Qingyan walked over with a warm smile and said, "So it's Leader Yu and Vice Leader Dark Crow. Qingyan welcomes you with open arms. Please take a seat." Yushu exchanged a few pleasantries with him and sat down. Lang Shiqi followed closely behind. As for the 10 people who came with them, they stayed where they were. After they sat down, the 2 began to exchange meaningless pleasantries. The 2 of them had found their opponents and began to flatter each other endlessly. Lang Shiqi glanced at the others. The young man across from him sat next to Qingyan but slightly behind him. He was Qingyan's right-hand man, Yan Feilin, who was at the 8th level of the pure spirit realm. The young man to Lang Shiqi's right was Hengming. He sat there expressionlessly with 2 strange purple scimitars at his waist. When he saw the 2 scimitars, Lang Shiqi was secretly envious. More than a month ago, Lang Shiqi had also fought with Hengming. Although he won, his scimitars were left with 2 thin cracks. He had been injured by Meng Ming's level 4 spirit tool. Lang Shiqi had even planned to assassinate Hengming, but he was too cautious and could not find a suitable opportunity. Lang Shiqi was slightly surprised by the person sitting next to Hengming. He was extreme evil. He was the leader of the Triad Alliance, Extreme Evil, who led the Lang Shiqi to the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile 3 months ago. Unexpectedly, after a few twists and turns, he actually ran to Seiji. Extreme Evil and Hengming were both at the 9th level of the Pure Spirit Realm. At this moment, the people from the 3 major forces were all here. Only Blood Moon was left. Not long after, the Delta Origi also arrived. Even from afar, she didn't hide her powerful aura of the Spirit Transformation Realm. Qing Yan let out a soft snort. His spirit force moved and the same aura of the Spirit Transformation Realm surged out. 2 powerful auras collided with a loud bang, stirring up a gust of wind, blowing the gravel under their feet. However, Lang Shiqi sensed that although Qing Yan's aura looked very powerful at first glance, it was a bit lacking. In fact, there was even a faint sense of impatience in his aura. It seems that he did indeed rely on external items to forcefully break through. Lang Shiqi thought to himself. However, he didn't understand why the Delta Origi would so openly announce that she had broken through to the Spirit Transformation Realm. Lang Shiqi knew that the Delta Origi had the aura concealment technique. She could completely hide her cultivation and use it at a critical moment to catch others off guard. However, since the Delta Origi had made such a choice, she must have her reasons. Lang Shiqi didn't ask too much. Ha ha ha, Moon Lord Blood Moon's cultivation is indeed profound. Please take a seat. Qing Yan took the initiative to disperse his spirit pressure and laughed. However, there was a layer of sweat on his palms hidden in his sleeves. The Delta Origi also withdrew her spirit force and raised her chin like a proud white swan before sitting down. Chen looked at her with respect but didn't sit down. Instead, he stood respectfully behind the Delta Origi. Seeing that everyone was here, Qing Yan said, "Everyone, it has been a 1.5 years since we arrived on the Blood Fog Island. There were more than 10,000 people who came here. But what about now? Only 100 or so people remain. It can be said that those who have survived until now are 1 in 100, and the few of you here are 1 in 1,000. I believe in your talent, perseverance and..." Just as Qing Yan was talking, Xiongming suddenly said, "Get to the point." Qing Yan's expression darkened when Xiongming interrupted him so rudely, but he didn't lose his temper. Instead, he continued, "In short, none of you want to die, right?" Everyone's expressions changed when they heard this. That's right, these people could be said to be the most powerful people on the Blood Fog Island. They enjoyed large amounts of resources and constantly worked hard to improve themselves. Why? Was it for the so-called power of the guild master? Perhaps, but definitely not all of it. This was because they knew that these were all rootless waters. If they couldn't leave the island, then it wouldn't take long for them to be devoured by the endless void. Their ultimate goal was to get out alive. This blood-red tower was the last obstacle that stood in their way. Qing Yan continued, "Based on the current situation, the blood-red sky will shrink to where we are in about a month's time. In other words, we must enter the Blood Fog Tower in a month. There are 4 entrances to the Blood Fog Tower. I'm sure everyone knows this, but I suggest that we work together to enter one of the entrances. That way, we'll be able to gather the strength of everyone on the Blood Fog Island, and our chances of survival will increase exponentially." Qing Yan carefully observed everyone's expressions after saying this. However, each of them was smarter than the other, and none of them showed any emotion. Lang Shiqi and Yushu looked at each other, and the former secretly signaled with their eyes that they couldn't agree. Putting everything else aside, who would they listen to if the 4 forces joined forces? The leaders of these factions were all proud and arrogant people, and none of them would refuse to listen to anyone else. In addition, they couldn't forget that there had been many fierce conflicts in the past 3 months. Even if they forced themselves to work together, they wouldn't trust each other at all. Delta Origi was the first to object. "I don't agree. Qing Yan League leader, if this is all you want, then I'll take my leave." "I don't agree either," said Meng Shiqi. Yushu also spoke up. "That's right. Since there are 4 entrances to the Blood Fog Tower, each of us can have one. Why should we force ourselves to work together? Plus, everyone knows that even if we work together, we won't trust each other." Qing Yan didn't expect the other 3 to reject him so decisively. At this moment, his face turned gloomy. Chapter 113. When Qing Yan saw that the others had rejected his suggestion so decisively, he shouted, "You'll regret this." As soon as he finished speaking, a few dozen figures vaguely appeared in the distance and surrounded them. Hungming silently gripped the hilt of his saber. Extreme Evil said, "What? Does the Qingyan League leader want to keep us here?" The atmosphere in the room became tense. Qingyan stared at Extreme Evil, then suddenly struck out with his palm. A powerful palm energy mixed with a scorching heat swept over. Extreme Evil was shocked, but he did not panic. He struck out a few times in succession, and the wind generated by his palms was not weak either. But when Azure Flame's palm force met Extreme Fiend's palm force, it immediately crushed it as easily as crushing dry weeds. Extreme Evil's expression finally changed, and he hurriedly backed away. At this moment, Hungming moved and struck out with his sabers. Two sharp sabers completely shattered the last of the palm energy. Hungming's eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared straight at Qing Yan. Qing Yan said, "Don't worry, I don't mean any harm." As soon as he finished speaking, he struck out with his palm again. And his target was Lung Shiqi. "Humph, you still want to show off?" When Lung Shiqi saw Qing Yan attacking Extreme Evil and himself, he knew what Qing Yan was planning. Faced with Qing Yan's powerful palm energy, Lung Shiqi also struck out with his own palm energy. The palm energy was not strong, but it brought about a strong gust of wind, and within the gust of wind, there was also a trace of coldness. The scorching palm energy and the cold gust of wind collided, and a sizzling sound was heard. The two forces, one hot and one cold, were evenly matched. Qing Yan's heart sank, and he felt a little embarrassed. He secretly increased his strength, but the result was that he still could not defeat Lung Shiqi. At that moment, Yushu stood up, his hand gripping the hilt of his saber. It seemed as though he would attack at any moment. Seeing this, Qing Yan withdrew his palm with a gloomy face. Lung Shiqi stood silently beside Yushu. At this moment, Seiji and the Yushu clan members were pressuring Qing Yan. If Qing Yan dared to attack again, they would join forces and attack him. He didn't seem to fear a spirit transformation realm expert at all. Qing Yan was also in great pain. He originally planned to display his strength as a spirit transformation realm cultivator to intimidate the Seiji and the Yushu clan. He wanted them to know how powerful he was and that cooperating with him was the wisest decision. His targets were not Hungming and Yushu, but Extreme Evil and Lung Shiqi. However, he didn't expect to lose to Lung Shiqi. Although they were evenly matched, he was one realm higher than Lung Shiqi. This result made it seem as if he, a spirit transformation realm cultivator, was not very powerful. As a result, he couldn't say what he wanted to say. He could only watch them leave with a dark expression. Before Extreme Evil left, he said to him, "I thought the Qing Yan League's leader was very powerful, but it seems like he's only a..." Qing Yan didn't speak, but his fists were clenched tightly. No one had expected the meeting to end so quickly. The main reason was that everyone had vaguely guessed Qing Yan's purpose before coming. They wanted to get some information from him, but it ended before they could do anything. If it was just Yushu and Qing Yan, it might have been possible. However, Delta Origi and Hungming were not the type to chat for half a day. They both went straight to the point, which led to the gathering ending so quickly. However, after everyone left, Lung Shiqi and Delta Origi secretly met. They exchanged information about the blood-colored tower as soon as they arrived, but unfortunately, there was nothing valuable. After all, no one could get close to the blood-colored tower. Lung Shiqi said with a serious expression, "We will enter the blood-colored tower in a month." Aha! Delta Origi's expression was also very serious. They both knew that there were only two outcomes after entering the blood-colored tower. Get out or die. This might be their last meeting. However, neither of them showed any other emotions. Take care. Break through to the spirit transformation realm as soon as possible. After that, the two of them left. Lung Shiqi turned around with a hesitant expression. In the end, he circulated his spiritual energy and released the spiritual pressure of the spirit transformation realm. Delta Origi's eyes lit up when she felt this spiritual pressure. At that moment, she suddenly heard the sound of something breaking through the air behind her. She leaned slightly to the side and reached out with two fingers. It was an emerald jade hairpin. Lung Shiqi returned to the Yushu clan and went straight to his tent to consolidate his cultivation. 2 days later, he had completely consolidated his cultivation. At the same time, a notification appeared before him. System upgrade complete. Lang Shiqi immediately called out the system and looked at his information. Name, Lang Shiqi, Lu Xingji, Cultivation, Spirit Transformation Realm Level 1 Cultivation Method. Rank 3 Cultivation Method. Moonlight Cloud Manual Rank 3 Cultivation Method. Beast Origin Demonic Technique Bloodline. Spiritual Skills, Rank 2 Spiritual Skill. Heavy Cross Spear Mastery Rank 2 Spiritual Skill. Formation Breaking Spear Mastery Rank 2 Spiritual Skill. 6 Young Palms Mastery Level 2 Spiritual Technique, Wind Catching Kick, Level 2 Spiritual Skill, Mountain Destroying Finger, Perfection Level 2 Spiritual Skill, Mysterious Cloud Spike, Rank 3 Spiritual Skill. Channel Breaking Sword Aura, System Coins. 521. There were no changes to his information. He then looked at the system interface and saw that there was an additional word, map. Lang Shiqi immediately opened the map, and a circular map appeared in front of him. However, 99% of the map was black. There was only a small white at the bottom right corner. Lang Shiqi guessed, "Is this a fog map?" Then, he opened the map and sank into the ground. As he continued to move, more and more white areas appeared on the map. He could clearly see some of the terrain in the white areas, but that was it. With this map, I don't have to worry about things like fog formations, but it doesn't seem to be very useful. Maybe there are other functions. I'll slowly explore it in the future, Lang Shiqi thought as he returned to the tent. Then, he opened the lottery interface that he had the most hope for. When he clicked on it, he saw that there were 3 lottery options. He was delighted. The 3 options were Beginner Lottery, Intermediate Lottery, and Unlimited Lottery. At this moment, all 3 options were lit up. Lang Shiqi clicked on the question mark next to the Intermediate Lottery. He found out that it cost 100 system coins to enter the Intermediate Lottery. He had always thought that he had saved up a lot of system coins, but now it seemed that he only had enough for 5 draws. This made Lang Shiqi feel very helpless, so he muttered to himself, "The beginner lottery only costs 10 system coins, but the intermediate lottery costs 10 times more. Is the intermediate lottery really that valuable?" Chapter 114. Lang Shiqi was surprised at the amount of system coins required for the intermediate lottery. However, after thinking about it, his Hand of the Earth was an intermediate prize. The Hand of the Earth had now been developed to a very high level. It could be said to be a combination of restriction, escape, defense, and attack. Moreover, it did not require any hand seals. It was simply amazing. Thinking of this, Lang Shiqi felt relieved. As the saying goes, you get what you pay for. The value of the intermediate prize was definitely not something that the beginner prize could compare to. Then, Lang Shiqi clicked on the intermediate lottery option and chose 5 consecutive draws. After a burst of rainbow-colored light. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize. Voice-changing technique. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize. Fairy talisman. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize. Soul essence. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize. Righteous thunder orb. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the intermediate prize. Frost sword aura. Voice-changing technique? Looking at the 5 prizes, Lang Shiqi felt that the most interesting one was the voice-changing technique. After picking it up, he found that it was a level 2 spiritual skill. Lang Shiqi did not hesitate and directly used his unlimited skill points to cultivate the voice-changing technique to the maximum level. Then, Lang Shiqi coughed lightly and his voice became rough. Lang Shiqi adjusted it again. His voice was sometimes hoarse, sometimes deep, and sometimes sharp. He could even imitate the voices of children and women. Not only that, he could even imitate the voices of small animals. The intermediate prize is indeed extraordinary, Lang Shiqi said with a hint of joy. The voice-changing technique seemed useless, but if used ingeniously, it could produce unexpected results. Then, Lang Shiqi picked up the fairy talisman. It was a square gem with a dark blue orb inlaid in the middle. It was tied with a simple string. A line of information appeared beside it. After wearing it, it can speed up the recovery of spiritual power. Lang Shiqi was delighted when he saw this line of words. Not bad. One had to know that as one's cultivation increased, the time it took to recover spiritual power would become longer. If they were in a dangerous environment, the sooner they recovered their spiritual energy, the more confident they would be. Lang Shiqi directly put the fairy amulet on his neck, and sure enough, he felt the spiritual power in his body become more agile. He chuckled and reached out to touch the wisp of light green flame-like thing floating in the air. It was a wisp of soul essence. Lang Shiqi didn't know who or what this soul essence belonged to, but he knew from the item's information that as long as he absorbed this soul essence, his mental power would increase greatly. With a curl of his finger, the soul essence flew toward him and entered between his eyebrows. In the blink of an eye, Lang Shiqi felt refreshed, and then there was a buzzing sound in his head, as if something had been opened. His vision suddenly went black, and when he could see again, he found himself in a narrow and dark space. To his surprise, he had turned into a small ball of green light. He controlled himself to shake around, but didn't find anything special. However, not long after, his vision went black again. Lang Shiqi opened his eyes, but immediately felt a sharp pain in his head, causing him to groan in pain. Did I overuse my mental power? This was because he had extracted the blood of many demonic beasts, and this process also consumed a lot of mental energy. He remembered that when he extracted the blood of the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile and several rank 1 monsters, a similar situation occurred. It seems that the dark space should also be related to mental power. In short, it's a good thing. Lang Shiqi murmured. Next, he picked up the purple-blue bead. This bead was half the size of a fist, and there were a few lightning runes engraved on it. When he picked up the bead, he saw the information about it, and then Lang Shiqi hurriedly stored it in the system space. The information said, Righteous Lightning Bead, a one-time consumable. Its power is equivalent to the full power attack of a spirit cultivator in the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm. It has additional damage to evil things. It was equivalent to the full power attack of a spirit cultivator in the middle stage of the spirit transformation realm. Lang Shiqi dared to say that if he threw out this bead, no one in the current Blood Mist Island would be able to block it. With this, he was more confident about the battle that would take place a month later. Finally, he picked up the small booklet. This was the rank 3 spiritual skill, Frost Sword Chi. He still used unlimited skill points to cultivate it to perfection in a short period of time, and then his eyes revealed a pondering expression. This Frost Sword Chi was similar to the unblocking Meridian Sword Chi that he had cultivated before. However, the unblocking Meridian Sword Chi's specialty was to seal the meridians and block the circulation of spirit energy, while the Frost Sword Chi had a dense cold air and had the effect of freezing. The two were comparable. However, Lang Shiqi had already integrated the channel unfolding sword aura into the mesmerizing eyes of flowers technique. Thus, he planned to do his best to integrate the frigid frost sword aura into it in the next month. With the previous example, it would be relatively easier. This way, he could target different opponents and choose between the chaotic blossom dazzling eyes with the unblocking Meridian Sword Chi or the Frost Sword Chi. As a result, this move became even more flexible. After counting all the prizes, Lang Shiqi was very satisfied because every item was very useful and made him feel that it was very worth it. He was still thinking about whether or not to secretly fill his pockets and get something from the sect to draw a few more times. After ending the intermediate lottery, Lang Shiqi called out the system interface again and his gaze fell on the lit-up, unlimited lottery. This unlimited lottery really gave him unlimited possibilities. The first time, he had drawn unlimited skill points. Lang Shiqi was very clear that if it wasn't for this godly prize, he might not have reached where he was today. The second time, he had drawn the Hand of the Earth, a special spiritual skill with endless uses. If it wasn't for the Hand of the Earth, he wouldn't have accidentally entered the underground space, and it would be even more impossible for him to obtain the demonic beast technique and have his current cultivation and combat strength. The most important thing was that he wouldn't have known that the second Heaven's Bane was coming, otherwise he might have died in the Heaven's Bane. It could be said that they were all linked, so from a certain point of view, the Hand of the Earth was no less helpful to Lang Shiqi than the unlimited skill points. Now that Lang Shiqi had another unlimited lottery chance, he was naturally looking forward to it. Phew! Lang Shiqi exhaled heavily, raised his finger, and clicked on the unlimited lottery option. He stared at the dazzling light in the system without blinking. After a few breaths of time, the light dissipated, and he didn't see anything. Just when he thought he had seen wrongly, a line of words appeared in front of him. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the advanced prize. Supercilious eyes. Chapter 115. A month passed in the blink of an eye. The strange thing was that no danger had appeared on Blood Mist Island during this month. Everyone on Blood Mist Island had been cultivating peacefully for a month. The only thing they did during this month was cultivate, and cultivate. What they needed to do was to wantonly consume resources and strive to become stronger. Yushu, with the support of a large amount of resources, finally crossed the bottleneck 2 days ago and entered the spirit transformation realm. But today, the Yushu clan was a little special. At this moment, everyone in the Yushu clan was celebrating. They took out all the food and water to share. They talked to each other, and some people even did strange and ugly dances. Everyone's faces were filled with happy smiles. Yushu was surrounded by the crowd, wantonly throwing a tantrum. He was jumping around excitedly, completely like a child. Of course, with their age they were still children. Lang Shiqi sent out Ziyu to patrol everyone in the sky. Then, he sneaked into a tent when no one was paying attention. Usually, this tent stored a large amount of the Yushu clan's weapons, but they were going to enter the Blood Tower tomorrow, so all the spiritual weapons were distributed. At this moment, there were only a dozen or so unranked weapons left in the tent. Lang Shiqi's target just happened to be these weapons that no one wanted. A dozen or so unranked weapons and my remaining system coins should be enough for 2 intermediate lottery draws, Lang Shiqi muttered to himself as he walked into the tent. During this month, Blood Fog Island seemed to have completely fallen into silence. Not only did they not cause any trouble, but even the demon beasts had disappeared. This gave Lang Shiqi, who wanted to obtain system coins, a headache, so he could only set his sights on his own home. Lang Shiqi casually picked up a scimitar and naturally waited for the system prompt. However, the strange thing was that after a few breaths of time, the system prompt did not appear. Lang Shiqi blinked in confusion and flipped through the weapon in his hand, but there was still no system prompt. Then Lang Shiqi picked up several other weapons, but the result was the same. He couldn't help but frown as he muttered, "What's going on? Did the system malfunction?" He then pulled out the dagger hidden at his ankle, and a system message immediately appeared before his eyes. Worth 29 system coins. Do you wish to sell? No. Of course, Lang Shiqi couldn't sell this level 2 spiritual tool, but at least the system notification appeared. After pondering for a moment, he seemed to have thought of something. He immediately walked out of the tent and borrowed a level 1 spirit tool from someone. It's worth 17 system coins. Will you sell it? No. Lang Shiqi returned the weapon. He had an answer in his heart, but it was an answer he did not want to accept. That was, after the upgrade, the system no longer needed those low-grade resources. Lang Shiqi didn't know if the system's standards were too high, or if it was too arrogant, but the system's change suddenly disrupted his plan. Just as he was having a headache, Yushu suddenly appeared and pulled Lang Shiqi away, shouting as he walked, Come, I'll pull the Dark Crow over." Immediately, a group of people rushed over and surrounded them in the middle. They danced and shouted, "Brother Yi!" Roar, 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 roar. Endless enthusiasm instantly drowned Lang Shiqi, and he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, he could only put aside all the doubts and guesses in his heart and celebrate with everyone. This was the first time since he came to this world that he had let down all his guard and vigilance. Perhaps this would also be the last time. Under the blood-red sky, a group of young men who came from nowhere and whose names were unknown were dancing with all their might. After a long time, the tired people went to rest. Today, no one was arranged to keep watch, but Yushu and Lang Shiqi personally kept watch. At this time, Yushu was leaning against a wooden chair, gnawing on a fruit with difficulty, burping from time to time. Lang Shiqi directly sat on the ground, leaning against a wooden pillar. The blood-red sky outside was not far from their camp. In about a day or so, it would devour the camp. In other words, tomorrow, they must enter the blood-red tower. Whether they live or die, it will be decided tomorrow. To be honest, even Lang Shiqi was not confident in his own heart. After all, no one knew what kind of danger they would encounter. As for whether they could survive in the end, he did not know. The fear of the unknown had always been in everyone's heart, so tonight was their first and last time to celebrate. He, don't you think it's strange? At this time, Yushu's voice came, pulling him back from his thoughts. Leng Shiqi glanced at him and asked cooperatively, "What's strange?" Yushu continued, "We're about to enter the blood-red tower, but I don't feel nervous at all. In fact, I feel a little excited when I think about it. I heard that if a person is extremely hungry, they won't feel hungry anymore." "Are you saying that I'm afraid?" Yushu said unhappily. "It's normal to be afraid. Who on Blood Fog Island is not afraid at this time? What about you?" Leng Shiqi laughed self-deprecatingly and said, "Of course I'm afraid. I'm afraid of dying here." "Oh, okay. I admit that I'm afraid too. I thought you would hold on a little longer." "Ha ha ha, you've admitted it. What's there to be afraid of?" "But Brother Leng, don't you think I'm really funny?" Yushu's voice suddenly became serious. Leng Shiqi glanced at him and asked, "How are you funny?" Yushu pondered for a moment and said, "In the past, when I formed the Yushu clan, I didn't have any feelings for the people under me. I only saw them as tools. Of course they might have seen me like that too. But we've gone through so many hardships together, so many storms to get to where we are today. How can I be heartless to them?" At this point, his eyes were a little red and he continued, But when I have feelings for them, I still have to continue using them as tools. Especially tomorrow. I can't bear it, but I have to do it because I want to live. I don't think I'm wrong, but I feel guilty in my heart. I'm in pain. I don't know what to do. Haha, don't you think I'm funny?" Leng Shiqi listened to him quietly. He thought that Yushu actually had such a side to him. He thought for a moment and asked, "Do you know what a cold-blooded animal is?" Seeing Leng Shiqi suddenly ask such a question, Yushu was a little confused, but he still replied, "Snake." "Yes, but you might not know. There's an animal whose blood is 10 times, 100 times colder than a snake." "What animal?" Leng Shiqi said a word softly. "People." Yushu frowned. "People are the most cold-blooded animals in the world, including you and me. So you don't feel pain at all. Do you think you have feelings for them? You're wrong. That's just what you think." Leng Shiqi looked at Yushu with a look of disbelief and continued, "If you don't believe me, I'll only ask you one question. Do you remember who Qishui is?" "Qishui." Yushu opened his mouth. He clearly knew this person, but when he thought of him, he couldn't remember who he was. Friend? Enemy? Oh, so he's my subordinate. He's the one who helped me build the foundation of the Yushu clan. He's dead. He seems to have died in the Battle of Puppets. What does he look like again? Thinking of this, Yushu suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He couldn't help but shiver. It seemed that even his blood was frozen. After a while, Yushu laughed softly, but gradually, his laughter became louder and louder. He even laughed until tears flowed out of his eyes. Yushu raised his hand and wiped the tears from his eyes. The corners of his eyes were red. "You're right. I'm a cold-blooded animal. I'm asking for trouble." Leng Shiqi didn't answer. Instead, he looked at the blood-red light in the sky. After an unknown amount of time, the blood-red light became fainter. He knew that it was almost dawn. Yushu stood up and stretched. He seemed to have returned to normal. He looked at the sky and then looked at Leng Shiqi. He said, "Aren't you going to see her?" Leng Shiqi also stood up. He brushed the dust off his body and said, "No need. We'll meet again if we have the chance." After saying that, he turned around and walked into his tent. Before he entered the tent, he tossed out something. Yushu stretched out his hand to catch it. Taking a closer look, he saw that it was a white pill. It was the antidote for the heart-destroying pill. Chapter 116. The next day. A total of 46 people from the Yushu clan stood in front of the blood-colored tower. They were all expressionless and didn't have any food or water on them. Behind them, the camp was long gone. Only this blood-colored tower remained on the entire Blood Fog Island. Whether they lived or died would be decided today. Yushu, who had always stood at the front, was now standing in the middle of everyone. Leng Shiqi, who was wearing a mask, was standing beside him. However, at this moment, Lang Shiqi was also wearing a large white cloak with a large hood covering half of his face. He was carrying a sword on his back. Everyone looked at the dark door not far away. It was like a giant mouth from the underworld that wanted to devour everyone. "Let's go." There were no heroic words, no passion, and no inspiring words. Just like that, Yushu said these two words lightly. In an instant, everyone's breathing became heavy. Everyone pulled out their weapons and stepped into the blood-colored tower. At the same time, the people from the other three forces also entered. Not long after they entered, the blood-colored sky completely swallowed up the entire place, leaving only this tower. When Lang Shiqi and the others entered the tower, they could only see one thing, and that was fog. What a thick fog! It was several times thicker than the fog outside. They could not see more than 10 feet away. Everyone channeled their spirit force into their eyes to see better, but they could only see about 2 feet away. Only Lang Shiqi and Yushu, who were at the spirit transformation realm, could see about 4 to 5 feet away. At this time, there was no need for Yushu to remind them. Everyone raised their vigilance and carefully walked inside. Crack! However, all of a sudden, someone stepped on something and made a sound. Lang Shiqi knew that something was wrong. He opened up his perception and clenched the sword in his hand. Sure enough, there was a series of ka-ka sounds coming from all around. It was like the sound of a mechanism being activated. Soon after, there was a dense sound of something breaking through the air. However, because the fog was too thick, it was impossible to tell what it was or where it came from. Whew! Lang Shiqi felt that he couldn't be too passive. He immediately struck out with his palm, causing a huge gust of wind to blow away the surrounding fog. After blowing away the fog, he saw that dozens of pitch-black nails had already shot towards his head. The Lang Shiqi's swords danced in the air, blocking all the black nails with clanking sounds. However, Lang Shiqi and Yushu were standing in the crowd, so they received the least amount of black nails, but the others were different. This was especially true for the group of people at the outermost perimeter. Hundreds of black spikes rained down like raindrops. Even though these people were all in the pure spirit realm, in the face of so many black nails, it was still difficult for them to resist for a while, and screams immediately rose and fell. After a round of black nails, it finally quieted down. Yushu immediately said, "Count the casualties." Sect Master, 5 brothers died, and 8 were injured. Hua Lingling quickly asked and replied. They hadn't done anything yet, but so many people had died. Yushu's face suddenly became a little ugly. Lang Shiqi said at this time, "Don't worry, there shouldn't be many of these traps. Otherwise, it would be meaningless for us to all die under the traps." Yushu nodded thoughtfully after hearing this, but at this moment, a ghostly figure suddenly flashed through the fog. Then there was a scream. A person suddenly fell to the ground. Everyone hurriedly looked over, and then there was the sound of people sucking in cold air one after another. It turned out that there was a huge hole in the person's chest, and the heart inside had disappeared. Who is it? What is it? If the people who died under the black nails just now were not strong enough, then this time it was not a matter of strength. They didn't even see the opponent and died in an instant. This kind of danger and fear were much greater than the traps. Some people were already a little panicked. "Don't panic, back to back," Yushu shouted, and everyone immediately followed. Ding! Ah! But in the blink of an eye, another person suddenly died, and even the weapon in his hand was broken in half. Everyone's heart sank even more, and an atmosphere of panic emerged. Knowing that this could not go on, Lang Shiqi's eyes under the hood suddenly changed. The veins around his eyes bulged, and his pupils turned green and white. Byakugan, activate. Byakugan was a high-level ocular skill from the anime world. It had a 360-degree field of vision with no blind spots, and super insight that could see through things. It could also see the amount and flow of energy in the body. It was a powerful ocular skill that combined detection, anti-detection, and the ability to see through weaknesses. After activating Byakugan, Lang Shiqi's field of vision suddenly expanded to a full range of vision. The world in his eyes turned black and white, and there were dozens of red and blue balls of light around him. Those were the spiritual energy and meridians of the Yushu clan. However, Lang Shiqi's attention was not on these people, because he immediately caught sight of a spiritual energy that was not very large, but abnormally terrifying. The owner of that spiritual energy was extremely fast, and constantly swam around, as if looking for a suitable prey. Lang Shiqi quietly nudged Yushu, indicating that he should follow him. Yushu nodded in understanding. Then, Lang Shiqi suddenly stomped his foot, and then a mud wall more than a foot thick appeared in a strange place. Everyone was baffled when they saw this. However, in the blink of an eye, the mud wall suddenly shattered. A short figure appeared there. When Lang Shiqi erected the mud wall, he had already rushed over on the black fog, and at this moment, he unceremoniously swung his sword. This saber light was even sharper than before, and it had reached a length of nearly 3 meters. In addition, another sword that was not weaker than his followed closely behind, and the two sword lights whistled as they slashed towards the figure. Unfortunately, the figure was extremely agile, and Lang Shiqi's sword light only grazed the side of the figure, while Yushu directly slashed empty air. However, Lang Shiqi had already used Byakugan's observation ability to predict this step in advance. His left palm lit up with a faint brilliance, and then he quickly formed a few spiritual seals with one hand, and fiercely pushed them forward. Then, a majestic cold energy surged out from his palm, and rushed towards the figure. Wherever the cold energy went, a layer of ice crystals instantly formed on the ground. This was one of the results of Lang Shiqi's fusion of spiritual techniques. He fused Spirit Strike and Ice Spread into 2 spiritual techniques. Spirit Strike, Path of Ice. The key point was that the direction of Lang Shiqi's attack wasn't directly aimed at the figure, but slightly slanted. However, the strange thing was that when the figure moved, it actually ran into the cold energy. It was as if it purposely ran into it. Lang Shiqi had used Byakugan to predict the direction that the figure was going to move in. The huge cold energy directly swallowed the figure, and in the blink of an eye, it condensed into a thick layer of ice crystals and froze it. Only then did everyone see that the figure was actually a small monkey half the height of a person, but this monkey's aura was that of a rank 2 monster. Chapter 117. When everyone saw what had attacked them, the fear in their hearts lessened. Although this demon monkey was a rank 2 demonic beast, the Yushu clan had dealt with rank 2 demonic beasts in the past few months, so they had some confidence. What are you waiting for? Get ready to attack! Yushu shouted. Everyone quickly moved in an orderly manner, surrounding the demon monkey. Every one of their weapons shone with rays of spiritual light, and their spiritual techniques were ready to be unleashed. Gotcha! A crack appeared on the ice crystal that froze the demon monkey. Then, the crack spread out like a spider web. Attack! Under Yushu's command, dozens of different attacks landed on the demon monkey one after another. Lang Shiqi was not in a hurry to attack. He was waiting for an opportunity. Bang! The ice finally shattered, and the demon monkey broke free. However, just as it was about to break free, dozens of attacks also arrived at its side. The demon monkey seemed to have some intelligence, and it quickly dodged. However, even though it was fast and dodged many attacks, dozens of people's weapons still hit the demon monkey. Although this demon monkey was a rank 2 demonic beast, it was different from the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile. It was very fast, but its defense was average. Dozens of people left many wounds on its body. Jie. The demon monkey bared its teeth and roared a few times. Its body emitted a tyrannical aura. Its 2 small eyes looked left and right, and then it pounced on a person nearby. The demon monkey was too fast. That person did not even have time to react before he felt a chill in his chest. He looked down and saw that his chest was empty. That person fell limply to the ground. However, it also created an opportunity for others. In the blink of an eye, more wounds appeared on its body. However, the demon monkey did not care about its injuries. It jumped left and right in the crowd, and every time it jumped, it would dig out a person's heart. Not long after, 5 people had already died in its hands. Lang Shiqi continued to observe silently. He did not attack because he knew that his speed was not as fast as the demon monkey. If he joined the battle, he would still be led by the nose. He had to find an opportunity to heavily injure the demon monkey. Just as the 7th person fell, Lang Shiqi suddenly moved. The wounded monkey demon finally slowed down a little. It stopped for a moment when it took out a heart and landed on the ground. At this moment, Lang Shiqi used Ghost Parade and Confusion Footwork at the same time, turning into an afterimage as he rushed over. At the same time, his spirit saber slashed out, and a gorgeous crescent-shaped saber light swept out. Half-moonlight slash. Now that he had broken through to the spirit transformation realm, the power of all his spiritual techniques had reached a new level. The glaring blade light enveloped the entire demon monkey. However, just as the blade light was about to land, the demon monkey's body suddenly erupted with boundless blood-red light. The bloody light was extremely viscous, greatly hindering the saber light. At this moment, the hair on the demon monkey's body stood on end, and its color gradually turned blood-red. What was even more terrifying was that its body was constantly expanding. In the blink of an eye, the demon monkey that was only half the height of a human grew into a giant monkey that was 2 feet tall. Lang Shiqi's half-moonlight slash tore through the bloody light and slashed at the demon monkey's waist. However, the saber light only cut a few inches into the demon monkey's abdomen. The demon monkey was in extreme pain. It roared and slammed its arms down. Boom! The unknown floor of the underground exploded with a loud bang, and the broken pieces shot out, injuring many people. However, Lang Shiqi, who was originally standing there, had long disappeared and appeared behind the demon monkey. Seeing the demon monkey's change, Lang Shiqi was not surprised, but happy. The demon monkey seemed to be much stronger, and its strength was incomparable, but it had also lost its speed, which was the most troublesome thing to him. It was also at this moment that a "so" sound was heard. A golden rope suddenly flew over and tightly wrapped around the demon monkey. Lang Shiqi glanced over and saw that it was Yushu who threw the rope. He immediately slashed out again. The others were not stupid, and they knew that this was an excellent opportunity, so they all made their moves. Puff, puff, puff. Many more wounds appeared on the demon monkey's body, and blood seeped out from its body. The demon monkey kept twisting its body, trying to break free from the rope. Fortunately, the rope was a rank 2 spirit treasure, and Yushu was also at the spirit transformation realm. Although he was far weaker than the demon monkey, he could still hold on for a short period of time. The demon monkey that was bound by the rope could only wait to be slaughtered, especially by Lang Shiqi. Every time Lang Shiqi attacked, he would cause obvious wounds to the demon monkey. Furthermore, Lang Shiqi would secretly shoot out a few strands of imbuing meridian sword chi to further weaken the demon monkey. Roar, roar. The demon monkey suddenly let out a roar. It raised its arms and broke the rope. Everyone thought that the rope could hold on for a while, but they were all shocked. The demon monkey's arms swung out violently, instantly sending a few people flying. Those people were trapped in the dense fog, and it was unknown if they were still alive. However, Lang Shiqi and Yushu were both happy because they could feel that the demon monkey's aura was rapidly weakening. It wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Yushu rushed over with his blade in both hands and slashed out 2 blade lights. When the blade lights got close, they turned into dozens of blade lights that landed on the demon monkey's body. Lang Shiqi gently jumped and used the half-moonlight slash again, ruthlessly chopping at the demon monkey's head. The rest of the people didn't hesitate and used their strongest spirit skills to attack. After a few breaths of time, the demon monkey's huge body fell to the ground. Phew! Everyone let out a sigh of relief. Lang Shiqi took out a dagger and stabbed it into the demon monkey's head. Then, he took out a fingernail-sized demon core and put it away. The others didn't react at all. They knew that the ones who contributed the most in the battle were Yushu and his vice leader. Yushu didn't say anything, so they wouldn't say anything. Moreover, they didn't have the demon core. After the demon monkey died, the fog in the area quickly dissipated. Not long after, everyone saw a pitch-black passageway not too far away. That should be the entrance to the next level. Lang Shiqi said. Yushu nodded and said to everyone, "There shouldn't be any danger now, but we can't let our guard down. Those who are injured, heal first. The rest of you, take turns to recover your spirit power." "Yes," everyone answered. Yushu looked around, and the more he looked, the worse his expression became. Because he saw 17 corpses on the ground. That meant that there were only 29 of them left. It had only been 30 minutes since they entered and so many people had died. This was only the first level. What kind of danger would there be? Yushu looked at the dark tunnel with a gloomy expression and felt a little uneasy. Chapter 118. On the first floor of the blood-colored tower, The Yushu clan members were still taking turns to recover their spiritual power. But at this moment, a sudden change occurred. A few huge cracks suddenly appeared on the ground, and under the cracks, they could vaguely see the endless void. Everyone was startled. Leng Shiqi was the same, because a crack had appeared beside him. Fortunately, he reacted quickly and hurriedly dodged it. Yushu hurriedly said, "Not good, let's go." Everyone no longer cared about recovering their spiritual power and hurriedly ran into the dark passage. When the last person ran in, the ground outside had already shattered. Below them was the void that could swallow everything. Yushu turned around and saw that no one had fallen into the void, so he heaved a sigh of relief. Rumble. Then before everyone could react, they felt their bodies shake, and the ground under their feet began to gradually rise. Leng Shiqi understood that this should be the way to the second floor. After a few seconds, the ground under their feet returned to normal, and a spacious circular space appeared in front of them. There was no fog in this space, and the place was about 200 to 300 feet in radius. Upon closer inspection, there were all kinds of strange patterns engraved on the walls. Leng Shiqi was familiar with these patterns, as he had seen many of them in the underground space, and the patterns on the walls were arrays. He immediately reminded everyone, "Be careful, there are arrays here." However, just as he finished speaking, all the arrays on the walls lit up. Immediately, everyone felt a huge suction force pulling them directly to the center of the second floor. After everyone had steadied themselves, wooden puppets walked out of the array formation one after another. These puppets were all humanoid and looked extremely exquisite, much better than the ones they saw in the wetlands. There were exactly 30 puppets. Moreover, these puppets were all different. The one at the front held a shield and an axe, the one at the back held a halberd, and the last one held a bow and arrow. This was like a small combat army. The 30 puppets surrounded everyone in 3 layers. Their originally empty eyes lit up with different colors of light. There weren't many people in the Yushu clan who had fought against humanoid puppets before. Back then, most of them were still in the spirit-gathering realm and were dealing with the lion-shaped puppets and the demonic beasts that came later. But even then, they knew that the greatest threat amongst the puppets was the archer puppets. He had to deal with the archer puppet first. However, before they could do anything, the puppets had already pressed down on them. In particular, the 10 archer puppets at the back all pulled out the bows on their backs and fired in unison. 10 sharp arrows flew over. Leng Shiqi and Yushu each blocked 2 arrows. The others were already prepared. Those who could dodge, and those who could block, blocked. After a round of arrows, only 2 of them were slightly injured. Surprisingly, none of them died. However, they weren't happy because the shield axe puppets and halberd-wielding puppets had already surrounded them. The clan members hurriedly went up to fight fiercely. However, this also meant that they couldn't be distracted and constantly guard against the arrows. Thump! Blood is no different stabbed the shield of the shield axe puppet, but it only made a small hole. One had to know that blood is no different was already in the late stage of the pure spirit realm and wielded a second-stage spiritual weapon. Even so, he was unable to cause any substantial damage to the shield axe puppet. This showed how tough these puppets were. At this time, Leng Shiqi quickly picked up a few arrows nearby. He raised his hand and shot the arrows at the archer puppet at the back. The arrows divided into 2 groups in mid-air and shot at the 2 archer puppets. With a few gotcha sounds, the arrows accurately hit the archer puppets' eyes. Their heads immediately tilted and they stopped moving. However, at this moment, the remaining 8 archer puppets shot another round of arrows. This time, everyone was too tired to deal with the puppets and had no room to dodge. In an instant, 4 people were killed by the arrows. Fortunately, Leng Shiqi and the Yushu clan blocked a few arrows. Otherwise, even more people would have died. Leng Shiqi and Yushu looked at each other and knew that they couldn't continue like this. They nodded in tacit understanding, and the 2 of them charged at the same shield axe puppet at the same time. Yushu gathered all his spirit force at the tip of his sword. His spirit transformation realm spirit force circulated at full force and instantly pierced through the shield of the shield axe puppet. Then, he suddenly slashed downwards. With a ka sound, the shield was directly broken into 2. Leng Shiqi followed closely behind. He no longer hid and a long spear appeared in his hand. He let out a roar and a hint of domineering aura appeared from his body. His body moved and the spear shot out like a dragon. An astonishing spiritual light erupted from the tip of the spear, and as it pierced forward, it suddenly transformed into a huge cross-shaped brilliance. This was the formation-breaking cross spear that Lang Shiqi had created by fusing the heavy cross spear and the formation-breaking cross spear. The formation-breaking cross spear carried a boundless aura as it rushed into the midst of the puppets, directly piercing towards the puppet whose shield had been split open by Yu Shu. With a loud pang, the shield axe puppet exploded with a loud bang. The formation-breaking cross spear didn't slow down and continued to smash into the halberd-wielding puppet behind it. The halberd-wielding puppet's defense was far inferior to the shield axe puppet, so a large hole was created by the spear. Yu Shu followed up with another strike to completely destroy it. The two of them worked together to tear a hole in the puppet. At this moment, the puppets on the side also closed in, but they were all stopped by Hua Lingling and the others. Lang Shiqi didn't dare to delay any longer and quickly rushed toward the archer puppet. Yu Shu went in another direction. The 8 archer puppets pulled back their bowstrings once, and Lang Shiqi flashed to the side of the puppet. With a gale slash, he chopped it into pieces. At the same time, he flicked his arm and threw the spear, destroying another puppet. On the other side, Yu Shu quickly dealt with an archer puppet. However, 5 arrows were still shot out. Now that there was no Lang Shiqi or the Yu Shu clan to block the arrows, 3 more people were killed in the blink of an eye. Although the other 2 arrows didn't hit their vitals, the 2 people were surrounded by many puppets and wouldn't be able to hold on for much longer. Lang Shiqi didn't dare to delay and used his fastest speed to kill 3 archer puppets before the next arrow was shot. The rest were all killed by Yu Shu. At this moment, all 10 archer puppets were finally destroyed. With these archer puppets dead, the biggest threat was gone and the rest was much easier. Although the shield axe puppets and halberd-wielding puppets were troublesome, they were only troublesome and not dangerous. Then Lang Shiqi and Yu Shu joined the battle and the battle gradually tilted in favor of the Yu Shu clan. In the end, after losing 2 more people, they finally destroyed all the puppets. Is it over? Yu Shu asked while panting. Don't let your guard down. Let's wait and see. Lang Shiqi looked around vigilantly and said. At this moment Mu-21 suddenly shouted, "There, look over there." When everyone heard this, they turned their heads and saw that a dark tunnel had appeared on the wall not far away. Seeing this, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. However, at this moment, many cracks appeared on the ground without warning. They didn't even have time to breathe. Everyone immediately ran towards the tunnel with all their might. Unfortunately, due to the sudden appearance of the crack, there were still 4 people who accidentally fell into the crack. Not even their bones were left behind. Chapter 119. The people who ran into the dark tunnel were all panting with lingering fear. After defeating the puppets this time, they thought that they would have some time to recover, but they didn't expect the ground to split open so quickly, catching everyone off guard. Lang Shiqi looked around and found that there were only 16 people left. Moreover, except for him and Yu Shu, everyone else was injured. In terms of danger, the second floor was not much more dangerous than the first floor, but the last crack in the ground was impossible to guard against. Feeling the ground under his feet begin to rise again, Lang Shiqi knew that they were going to the 3rd floor. He took advantage of this gap to swallow 2 pills to recover his spiritual energy. After entering the 3rd floor, the environment was similar to the 2nd floor. The only difference was that not only were there arrays engraved on the walls, but even the entire ground was engraved with arrays. Seeing this scene, everyone including Lang Shiqi's heart sank. This floor was probably even more terrifying than the 2nd floor. With heavy hearts, these people walked step by step into the 3rd floor. However, when they reached the center, they didn't see anything happening, nor was there any danger. Lang Shiqi frowned and looked around. He turned his head to say something to Yu Shu, but when he turned his head, he was stunned. There was no one behind him. The entire 3rd floor was empty, and he was the only one left. Lang Shiqi was shocked, but he immediately calmed down. He knew that the people around him could not disappear in an instant. Thinking about the arrays he saw before, he guessed that it was very likely an illusion. Lang Shiqi closed his eyes and a faint wave of spiritual energy spread out from between his eyebrows. The surrounding environment also changed slightly. The most obvious thing was that the patterns engraved on the walls and ground had disappeared. This meant that he was already in the middle of an array. Lang Shiqi. At this moment, A clear voice came from behind. Lang Shiqi quickly turned around and raised his eyebrows.
His expression was a little unnatural as he said, "Delta Origi?"
That's right, the person who appeared behind him was a Delta Origi. But Lang Shiqi could tell that this Delta Origi was fake at a glance. Although this Delta Origi was very similar to the real Delta Origi in terms of figure, appearance, and temperament, it was not an exaggeration to say that it was exactly the same. However, for some reason, this Delta Origi did not look like a real person. This was just like a wax figure or a painting. No matter how lifelike it was or how similar the painting was, a fake was still a fake and could be seen at a glance. Lang Shiqi thought to himself, maybe it's because my spiritual power isn't weak, so I have some resistance to illusions.
However, he immediately put on an anxious expression and said, "Delta Origi, why are you here?"
Are you okay? Delta Origi smiled shyly and said, I'm fine. I'm just a little injured. Where are you injured? Let me see. Lang Shiqi's face showed a concerned expression as he quickly walked over. Just as Lang Shiqi was about to touch Delta Origi suddenly raised its hand. Its soft sword suddenly stabbed out dozens of silver snake-like sword shadows. However, Lang Shiqi was even faster. Before Delta Origi stabbed out, his figure changed into 9 phantoms. Each phantom stabbed out with a sword, and at the same time, it was mixed with invisible sword chi. In an instant, the sword light shot out in all directions, and the sword chi was everywhere. Whoosh! Lang Shiqi's figure had already appeared behind Delta Origi. Following that, 9 sword rays wrapped in sword chi mercilessly fell. Delta Origi's sword shadows also shattered a few of the sword rays, but more still stabbed into her body. Delta Origi was immediately covered in blood, and half knelt on the ground. Why are you treating me like this? Delta Origi asked sorrowfully. Lang Shiqi was unmoved. He coldly said, a fake is a fake.
Ha! Delta Origi laughed sadly and said, a fake.
Seeing this scene, Lang Shiqi's heart suddenly thumped. He had an ominous feeling.
Gu San stood up, and the strange thing was that the injuries on her body had all healed.
She continued, that's right, I am indeed a fake. You saw through it a long time ago. This means that either you're very scheming, or your spiritual power is very strong. However, although I'm a fake, my heart is real. Lang Shiqi's expression gradually darkened. Delta Origi continued, I'm the manifestation of the obsession in your heart, including your memories and feelings for her. I can even feel her feelings. Why are you telling me this? Lang Shiqi frowned and asked. He could break this illusion at any time, and Delta Origi's words could not shake his mind. However, the feeling of being seen through was not a good feeling. Delta Origi revealed a strange smile and said, it's easy for you to break the illusion, but if you think this is just a small illusion, then you're wrong. We may meet again in the future. Let me ask you one last question. If I'm real, will you do the same to me? This sentence suddenly shocked Lang Shiqi, but in the next moment, Delta Origi in front of him disappeared on its own. The surrounding scene also scattered like a burned picture scroll. Lang Shiqi finally returned to the real world. He quickly turned his head and saw that everyone else was standing straight in the same place. Their eyes were full of confusion. Obviously, they had all fallen into an illusion. And they were actually still at the place where they had just stepped into this place. It turns out that we've been in an illusion since the moment we entered here. Lang Shiqi murmured with lingering fear. Fortunately, his spiritual power was not weak, so he could break the illusion so easily. Otherwise, thinking of this, Lang Shiqi's heart suddenly tightened. Otherwise, what could he do? Could he really kill the Delta Origi? Thinking of the last sentence of Delta Origi, Lang Shiqi's eyes also showed a look of confusion. But Yushu, who was next to him, suddenly shivered, then sat on the ground and panted heavily. Such a big movement pulled Lang Shiqi's thoughts back. Seeing that Yushu also broke the illusion so quickly, Lang Shiqi was a little surprised. He reached out to help Yushu up. Yushu subconsciously held his hand, but when he looked up and saw that it was Lang Shiqi, he immediately let go. He sat on the ground and quickly moved back. His speed was so fast that it made people speechless. Yushu looked around with a pale face. When he realized that he could see the others, he muttered to himself,
Oh my god, I'm finally out.
That was terrifying. Seeing Yushu's reaction, Leng Shiqi's mind turned. He seemed to have guessed something. He walked step by step towards Yushu, narrowed his eyes and asked, "What did you encounter in the illusion?" Chapter 120. Leng Shiqi was wearing a large cloak and a dark force mask. He looked down at Yushu, and a shadow covered him. He asked coldly, "What did you encounter in the illusion?" Yushu wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and laughed dryly. "Hee, nothing. Then tell me how you got out of the illusion." Leng Shiqi stopped joking and asked seriously. Seeing Leng Shiqi like this, Yushu finally let out a sigh of relief. He thought for a bit and said, "Actually, I'm not very sure. At first, I thought you were really going to..." Yushu's expression became a bit unnatural, but Leng Shiqi signaled him to continue. "Cough, I thought you were really going to kill me, so we fought. Io, Dark Crow bro, you were too strong, I couldn't take it at all. Then you suddenly used the half-moon sword glint. I thought I was going to be killed, but I didn't expect the half-moon sword glint to hit himself. Then I came out." Hearing this, Leng Shiqi nodded thoughtfully. If what the Delta Origi said was true, then the Leng Shiqi Yushu encountered in the illusion had the memories of Leng Shiqi in his mind. However, the half-moon rapid light slash was a move that Leng Shiqi had fused 3 spiritual skills together. It was an ultimate move that he had comprehended when he was at his limit. It wasn't something that could be used with just a bit of memory. So it was possible that the Leng Shiqi in Yushu's illusion was counterattacked by this move. But Leng Shiqi didn't know whether to laugh or cry at how Yushu escaped the illusion. Yushu looked at the others standing there in a daze. He sighed and said, "Ah, I didn't expect this level to be an illusion. I don't know how many people can wake up." He wanted to help others, but he himself had somehow gotten rid of the illusion. He had no idea how to do so, so he could only helplessly help. Although Leng Shiqi's spiritual power wasn't weak, it was his first time coming into contact with something like an illusion. He couldn't think of any good ideas for the time being and felt a little helpless. He could only helplessly say, "They can only rely on themselves." Just as he finished speaking, another 2 people broke free from the illusion and slumped to the ground. He turned his head and saw that it was Mu-21 and blood is no different. At this time, the 2 of them were soaked in cold sweat. Leng Shiqi and Yushu hurried forward to help them up and asked. However, they never expected that the person they met in the illusion was actually Leng Shiqi as well. And the results were similar to Yushu's. Leng Shiqi, inexplicably, committed suicide in the end. Yushu finally felt better at this time. He thought to himself, "So I'm not the only one who was traumatized by Leng Shiqi." Leng Shiqi really didn't know what to say. He could only recover his spiritual power while thinking of ways to help others get rid of the illusion. At the same time, he waited for others to wake up. Gradually, a few people broke free from the illusion, but the ground began to crack and collapse again. The speed of the collapse wasn't fast, but there wasn't much time left for them. Leng Shiqi recovered his spiritual power and opened his eyes. He saw Yushu anxiously looking around and glancing at someone from time to time. That person was Hua Lingling. She was still immersed in the illusion. Seeing that there were more and more cracks on the ground, Yushu became more and more anxious. Leng Shiqi also thought of an immature idea in the process of recovering his spiritual power, so he said to Yushu, "I have a method that might be able to try, but I've never done it before, so the hope is not great. If we're not careful, it might even cause Hua Lingling to have a mental breakdown and die." Yushu's face showed some hesitation. Hua Lingling joined him when he first established the Yushu clan. She had been with him for the longest time. And after she broke through to the pure spirit realm, many things in the clan were taken care of by her. It could be said that she had helped Yushu a lot inside and outside. There was both merit and hard work. Yushu really couldn't bear to watch Hua Lingling die here. Even if there was only a glimmer of hope, he wanted to grasp it. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, "Let's try it." Leng Shiqi nodded and walked to Hua Lingling. Then he opened his eyes slightly, and an invisible mental power spread out from between his eyebrows and poured into Hua Lingling's forehead. He was planning to use his mental power to directly attack Hua Lingling's spiritual world. When Hua Lingling was trapped in the illusion,
Such a violent method was indeed likely to cause her to have a mental breakdown, but this was the only way, because there was almost no time. Hua Lingling let out a muffled groan as a painful expression appeared on her face. Beads of sweat appeared on her cheeks. At this time, blood is no different, and the others had already run into the black passage. He hurriedly shouted, "Hurry up, this place is going to collapse soon." Seeing that Hua Lingling was still unconscious, Lang Shiqi sighed inwardly and turned to enter the black passage. But at this moment, Hua Lingling suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood and opened her eyes. However, her eyes were unfocused and lifeless. Yushu was quick to react. He hurriedly hugged Hua Lingling, who was about to fall, and quickly ran into the black passage. When the three of them entered, the space on the third floor completely collapsed. Yushu said gratefully, "Brother Dark Crow, thank you." Lang Shiqi's gaze drifted back and forth between Yushu and Hua Lingling, revealing a meaningful look. Yushu's face turned red. He coughed dryly and changed the topic. "How many people are left?" Mu Shiqing, blood is no different, and the others opened their mouths but still did not speak. Yushu turned around. He did not need to count. He could tell at a glance that including himself, there were only 9 people left. 9 people. There were only a single digit left. The illusory array on the third floor took away the lives of 7 people without shedding a single drop of blood. What was even more terrifying was that there were still 2 more floors below. Could the 9 of them make it through? Even Lang Shiqi could not help but feel a little nervous. However, he was still confident because so far, at least they had not encountered any life-threatening danger. Not long after, the 9 of them finally arrived at the 4th floor. The space on the 4th floor seemed to be smaller than the 3rd floor. What was different was that there were 4 floating stone platforms in the center of the 4th floor. The stone platforms were not big and could only accommodate 1 person standing on them. Lang Shiqi and the others stepped into the 4th floor. They were all cautious and vigilant, but after a while, there was still no danger. Could it be another illusory array? Blood is no different asked, puzzled. Yushu walked to the 4 stone platforms with a thoughtful look. He said, "It's not an illusory array. The test on this floor might be related to these 4 stone platforms." Lang Shiqi looked at the 4 stone platforms and had some guesses. He said, "That's right. If I'm not wrong, only 4 people can pass this floor." Chapter 121. After Lang Shiqi finished speaking, everyone looked at the 4 stone platforms with eager gazes. Perhaps to prove that Lang Shiqi was right, the stone platforms suddenly released a ray of light and then disappeared. Immediately after, the stone platforms began to slowly rise. Although the rise was very slow, it would only take another incense stick of time for it to rise to a height they couldn't reach even if they jumped. This meant that the 9 people present would have to kill each other to compete for the 4 spots. And they didn't have much time. They were all very smart people and quickly understood the meaning behind this. They looked at each other in dismay. They had fought side by side for a long time, and now they were about to kill each other. This was a bit difficult for them to accept. However, in the face of the great terror of life and death, no one would choose death. Their gazes gradually changed. They no longer trusted or cared for him. Instead, cold killing intent slowly emerged. At this moment, Lang Shiqi moved and stood on a stone platform in the blink of an eye. He slowly pulled out his blade and his aura continued to rise, giving off bursts of powerful aura. Spirit Transformation Realm. The expressions of the others changed. They originally thought that this vice leader was only at the peak of the pure spirit realm and still had a trace of fantasy in their hearts. However, at this moment, they completely destroyed this fantasy. They were not a match for Dark Crow. Yushu's expression was very calm. When Lang Shiqi attacked on the 1st floor, he had noticed Lang Shiqi's cultivation, so he wasn't surprised. Moreover, Yushu could also guess that the reason why Lang Shiqi revealed his cultivation at this moment was because he didn't want to fight with everyone and let them back off. Then Yushu also circulated his spirit force and erupted with the spirit pressure of the spirit transformation realm. No one dared to stop him. Standing on the stone platform, Yushu looked at everyone. When he saw the hidden killing intent in their eyes, Yushu's heart turned cold. But when he saw Hua Lingling, his heart softened again. At this time, Hua Lingling had just regained her consciousness and was still a little weak.
She definitely could not exert her full strength. If she were to fight with someone else, her chances of survival would be slim. As if she had seen through Yushu's thoughts, Hua Lingling smiled gently and said, "Let me fight. No matter what the outcome is, I have no regrets." Yushu didn't say anything. Instead, he slowly closed his eyes. He didn't want to see his own people killing each other. This was like a signal, and soon after, the 7 of them began to fight. Lang Shiqi, on the other hand, had been watching their battles. Among the 7 of them, he was undoubtedly most optimistic about Mu 21, Blood is no different, and Hua Lingling. This was because their cultivation was at the late stage of the pure spirit realm, while the other 4 were only at the middle stage of the pure spirit realm. Although Hua Lingling's condition was not good, she had followed Yushu for the longest time and was also in charge of the upper echelons of the Yushu clan. It was impossible to say that she did not have any trump cards in her hands. Time slowly passed, and at this time, Lang Shiqi and Yushu were already a person's height away from the ground. The battle below was no different from what Lang Shiqi had expected. The 4 spirit cultivators at the middle stage of the pure spirit realm were the first to die. There were only Hua Lingling, Mu 21, and Blood is no different left. However, there were only 2 positions. From Lang Shiqi's point of view, he naturally hoped that Mu 21 and Blood is no different would win. These 2 people were more or less related to him. In his opinion, Mu 21 and Blood is no different could join forces to besiege Hua Lingling. This way, they would all be able to obtain the qualifications to enter the next level. But from Yushu's point of view, it was best for the 3 of them to fight on their own. The result was exactly not what Lang Shiqi had expected. The 3 of them were now fighting on their own. Hua Lingling swung her sword to deflect Blood is no different spear, but Mu 21's attack had also arrived. When Mu 21 touched Hua Lingling, his hands strangely wrapped around Hua Lingling's arm. It was the vine entanglement technique. At this time, Hua Lingling was already somewhat exhausted. A few traces of ruthlessness flashed past her eyes. She abandoned the sword in her right hand and a chess piece slipped out from her sleeve. She suddenly flicked it, and the chess piece suddenly shot towards Mu 21. Mu 21's expression changed drastically and he hurriedly retreated, but the distance between the 2 of them was too close. After the chess piece shot out, it grew in the wind and turned into a huge chess piece with the word, "Suppress," engraved on it. Mu 21 could not dodge in time and was heavily pressed to the ground by the chess piece. The sound of bones cracking could be heard. Then, the chess piece suddenly disappeared. Mu 21 was lying on the ground covered in blood. His eyes were staring blankly at the top. He was barely breathing. There was not much time left. "Go," Mu 21 said weakly, his tone very calm. Hua Lingling turned her head away and did not look at him. She muttered, "Don't blame me. Haha, to be able to live until now. I'm already very satisfied," Mu 21 said intermittently. Then, Hua Lingling and Blood is no different looked at each other and leaped onto the last 2 stone platforms together. The stone platforms continued to rise as huge cracks began to appear on the ground. Mu 21's gaze finally landed on Lang Shiqi. Lang Shiqi also lowered his head to look at him. Just as Mu 21's vitality was about to dissipate, Lang Shiqi took off his mask and threw it down. "Then I'll let Raven accompany you." At this point, only 4 of the 46 people who had entered the blood-colored tower were left. The 4 people on the stone platforms all had heavy hearts. None of them spoke. Soon, the stone platforms rose into another space. This was a very small room. It was completely bare inside. There was nothing but a stone door in front of them. Lang Shiqi and the other 3 walked down the stone platforms and carefully inspected the place. When they did not find any traps, he said, "You guys recover your spiritual power first. I'll protect you guys." Yushu and the other 2 did not stand on ceremony. They found a corner and sat down cross-legged to circulate their qi. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lang Shiqi used the breath-concealing technique to conceal his cultivation level. He only revealed that he was at the 9th level of the pure spirit realm. Yushu did not consume much spiritual power, so he finished very quickly. However, Hua Lingling and Blood is no different had just experienced a great battle. Especially when Hua Lingling was still injured, she would need a long time to recover. However, they did not have that much time. About half an hour later, the stone door of the room suddenly opened by itself. An inexplicable force pushed them out. Then, the stone door closed by itself. Leng Shiqi looked left and right. The scene in front of them was similar to the previous floors. However, there were also 3 stone doors on the walls in the other 3 directions. Then, the 3 stone doors opened one after another, and more than 10 people emerged from them. Upon closer inspection, they were people from Blood Moon, Seiji, and the Qingyan League. After they came out, they also looked around and found people from other forces. Leng Shiqi first looked at Blood Moon. As expected, Delta Origi and Ah Chen were there. There were also 2 spirit cultivators at the late stage of the pure spirit realm. At the same time, Delta Origi also looked over. Their eyes met in the air, and then they silently looked away. The people from the other 2 forces were Xiongming, Extreme Evil, Qingyan, and Yan Feilin. Xiongming's cultivation level was already at the spirit transformation realm. However, when Qingyan saw that Dark Crow from the Yushu clan was not there, she felt a burst of joy. Then, she had other thoughts. Chapter 122. 16 people from 4 different factions were gathered here. After they looked at each other, Ji Sha was the first to speak. He said to Qingyan in a strange tone, "Luckily, we didn't agree to work with someone. Otherwise, we wouldn't be standing here with just 16 people." Qingyan looked at Extreme Evil with displeasure, but she didn't flare up. Instead, she spoke to Yushu. "Leader Yu, I remember that you have someone called Dark Crow. He's very strong. Why don't I see him?" Leng Shiqi had already taken off his mask, revealing his true face. But now, only Yushu's group and Delta Origi had seen Leng Shiqi's true face. Everyone else who had seen him was dead. Therefore, no one knew that he was actually Dark Crow. Yushu chuckled in his heart, but he deliberately put on an ugly expression and said in an unfriendly tone, "Qingyan League leader, you should mind your own business." Just as Qingyan was about to say something, a huge spiritual formation suddenly appeared on the ground. The spiritual formation shone with a dense blood-red light, and a huge figure gradually rose from the ground. Qingyan and the others all closed their mouths and stared at the figure. It was a strange demon beast that was more than 10 feet tall. It was strange because its upper body was that of a bull, and its thick arms carried 2 pitch-black pitchforks. However, its lower body was that of a long snake. The intersection of the 2 bodies seemed to be sewn together by red silk threads, and a faint blood-red light could be seen coming out. There were also 8 chains in the spiritual formation that tightly bound the demon beast. It kept struggling and roaring, but the chains didn't move at all. Leng Shiqi silently drew his spiritual sword and was on full alert. Everyone else was the same. They could all guess that this might be the last test. Demonic beasts that could be used as the final test were definitely not easy to deal with. After the demonic beasts in the spiritual array appeared, the 8 Vajra chains suddenly retracted, and the spiritual array disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. The moment the chains and the spiritual array disappeared, the demonic beast roared towards the sky, and a ferocious sound wave reverberated outwards. Everyone covered their ears in pain. What was even more terrifying was that a powerful and terrifying aura was being emitted from the demonic beast's body. It was an aura that was enough to make everyone despair. That aura pressed down on everyone's body, causing everyone's face to turn pale. This was definitely not a rank 2 monster beast. Behind the Delta Origi, Ah Chen shouted in horror. Is this a rank 3 monster?" Although the others didn't say anything, they all had the same thought in their minds. Originally, they thought that they had already paid enough attention to this demonic beast, but unexpectedly, this demonic beast's strength had far exceeded their expectations. Would they be able to pass the final test? Among this group of people, only Leng Shiqi knew that this demonic beast wasn't a rank 3 monster. This was because when he accidentally entered the underground space for the first time, he accidentally heard the conversation between Meng Wanshan and Zhuo Laogue. He knew that the Blood Mist Island didn't seem to be able to contain a rank 3 monster. And this strange demonic beast in front of them should be the blood fusion beast that Zhuo Laogue spoke of. Leng Shiqi whispered to Yushu, "This is a blood fusion beast. Its strength is comparable to a rank 3 monster, but it's not very stable. While the demonic beast is not ready to attack, we should take the initiative and attack its stitches." Yushu didn't know how Leng Shiqi obtained this information, but he didn't have any suspicions and didn't ask any questions.
he shouted. "Everyone!" At this final step, I don't think anyone is willing to die here. Don't hide anymore, we should take the initiative and attack the stitches with all our strength. The people from the other three forces weren't stupid. They knew that only by working together would they have a chance of survival. When Yushu's voice fell, they all nodded solemnly. Lang Shiqi's spirit power revolved and his left hand lit up with starlight. Then he quickly formed a dozen spirit seals. A circular spirit formation suddenly appeared in front of him, and a large amount of cold air gathered in the spirit formation. In the blink of an eye, the cold air condensed into a 3-meter-long ice sword. Lang Shiqi pushed his hands forward and the ice sword suddenly flew out. This was Lang Shiqi's fusion of Spirit Attack and Frost Sword Qi. Spirit Attack, Ice Giant Sword. Yushu didn't pay much attention to Lang Shiqi's movements. He threw out a chess piece. This chess piece was very similar to the one that Hua Lingling used before, but the word seal was written on it. However, when the others saw Lang Shiqi make such a giant ice sword, their expressions were different, but they were all shocked. They didn't expect this person to be a spirit caster. But how come they had never seen or heard of him before? Of course, they didn't have the time to think about this now. Most of them took out different but powerful things. These were basically their trump cards, but they didn't hesitate to use them at this time. However, they didn't expect these things to be able to kill the monster. They just wanted to weaken it as much as possible before the real battle. Lang Shiqi's Frost Greatsword was the first to pierce through the seams of the fused blood beast. However, to everyone's surprise, the Frost Greatsword was only able to pierce through a little before it was unable to penetrate any further. Lang Shiqi narrowed his eyes and the spirit seal in his hand changed. The giant ice sword turned into a large amount of cold air and covered the upper body of the blood beast. In the blink of an eye, a layer of ice crystals formed. At the same time, Yushu's chess piece smashed down, and at the same time, 7 strange things flew over. In an instant, all kinds of fire, thunder, and wind blades whistled and smashed into the stitches of the blood beast's abdomen, causing the entire space to be filled with rolling waves of spiritual power. Everyone stared at the blood beast. Lang Shiqi pulled the hood on his head and quietly opened his supercilious eyes. Through his supercilious eyes, he could see that the spiritual power in the blood beast's body had indeed weakened and was a little unstable. When the light dissipated, the blood beast's body was revealed. There was a small hole on its head, which should have been hit by Yushu's chess piece. There were several different kinds of wounds on its abdomen, but none of them were deep. Everyone's attacks did hurt it, but it was only a light injury. The merged blood beast had just escaped from the trap, and before it could start a massacre, it was beaten to a pulp. It waved its arms furiously and threw the pair of pitchforks at the people from the Netherworld office. Meng Ming, extreme evil, and the others instantly scattered and retreated. However, one of them was still a step too slow due to the terrifying aura of the blood beast, and was instantly pierced through by the pitchforks. He couldn't be any more dead. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. That person was at the 8th level of the pure spirit realm, but he couldn't even withstand a single attack. Chapter 123. The power of the merged blood beast exceeded everyone's expectations, but at this point, there was no turning back. The only thing left for them was to fight to the death. After the merged blood beast killed one person, the first to make a move was Xiaofan, who was closest to it. Xiaofan held 2 strange purple scimitars in his hands. After injecting his spiritual power into them, purple patterns appeared on the scimitars, releasing beams of mesmerizing purple light. Xiaofan had also cultivated movement techniques. His body moved, and 2 thin purple beams of light flashed through the air, slashing at the merged blood beast's snake tail. Delta Origi was 1 step behind him. She held an azure long sword, and judging from its quality, it was also a 3rd-stage spirit sword. She used her bewildering footwork technique, and with a swing of her long sword, hundreds of azure sword lights instantly engulfed the merged blood beast. Yushu, Qingyan, and the others also followed in a timely manner. In the instant that Xiaofan's dual blade slashed down, the merged blood beast twisted its body in an attempt to evade. However, right at this moment, 6 earthen pillars as thick as an arm suddenly erupted from the ground, trapping the merged blood beast in place. The one who made this move was none other than Lang Shiqi. Now that he was a step closer to developing the Hand of the Earth, and with a breakthrough in his cultivation, It was no problem for him to summon 6 earthen pillars in an instant. Even though the 6 earthen pillars were shattered by the merged blood beast in the blink of an eye, everyone's attacks had already arrived in that short period of time. Xiongming's dual blade slashed out, leaving 2 deep gashes on the merged blood beast's snake tail. The merged blood beast's arms suddenly turned, and it raised its 2 pitchforks, but they were blocked by Delta Origi's countless sword lights. Immediately afterward, Yushu's saber lights, Qingyan's fists, and everyone else's attacks also landed on the merged blood beast's body. More than a dozen powerful attacks left wounds all over the merged blood beast's snake body. Among them, Xiongming, Yushu, and Qingyan were the ones who left the most severe wounds. At this moment, a bang was heard. The fused blood beast had crushed all the sword lights and sent Delta Origi flying. However, it did not have enough strength left. She continued to dissipate the force of the attack in mid-air, and finally landed lightly on the ground. Obviously, she was not injured at all. Then the fused blood beast swung its tail, trying to fling all the ants away. However, at this moment, a thick earthen wall rose from the ground and helped everyone to slow down. Taking advantage of this gap, everyone retreated. Unfortunately, one of them was still sent flying by the snake's tail and crashed into the wall in the distance. Moreover, his entire body sank into the wall. Viscous blood could be seen flowing out from the wound. The power of the fused blood beast's tail was so strong. The eyes of the fused blood beast burst out with 2 bloody rays. It looked around with a ferocious expression, and its gaze finally locked onto the Lang Shiqi. Lang Shiqi suddenly felt an invisible pressure pressing down on his heart, making him a little breathless. However, he did not panic at all. He raised his arms and erected 3 thick earthen walls in front of him. Then, a layer of black mist rose from under his feet and he quickly dodged. Almost at the same time, the fused blood beast twisted its huge body and charged onto the earthen walls in a few seconds. The 3 earthen walls crumbled like paper, but Lang Shiqi had already dodged out of the way. After Lang Shiqi stood still, he did not stay idle. His left hand flashed and a large amount of cold air condensed before him to form a giant ice sword. He pushed with both hands and the giant ice sword flew out, stabbing into the wound caused by Xiongming's attack. This time, the giant ice sword pierced 1/3 of the way in. At the same time, extremely cold air and a few rays of sword energy burst out and mercilessly eroded the flesh of the fused blood beast's tail. Even so, the fused blood beast did not care about the injury to its tail and immediately charged at Lang Shiqi. Lang Shiqi could not help but curse. He had hidden his strength before so that he would not be noticed by the fused blood beast, but he was still targeted. He did not know why his hatred was so great. If this continued, he would have to reveal his strength. Unexpectedly, just as the fused blood beast charged over, a person suddenly appeared next to it. It was Delta Origi. But now, Gu-san was a bit unimaginable. Her black hair had turned white, and her face had become abnormally pale, but the aura on her body had become a bit stronger. Delta Origi's green sword shot out streaks of sharp light. The green sword successfully pierced the fused blood beast's flesh, but it could not stop its advance. Delta Origi had an idea. She grabbed the hilt of her sword and poured spirit force into her legs to stop the fused blood beast. The fused blood beast did not slow down in the slightest. Instead, a long sword mark appeared on its body. Lang Shiqi held the sword in his right hand and his left hand clenched into a fist. He was ready to attack at any moment. After Gu-san made his move, Lang Shiqi was surprised to see that Meng Ming also made his move. He swung his arms, and 2 streaks of purple light pierced through the air, piercing into the back of the blood beast. At the same time, Yushu also arrived. He jumped high into the air and slashed down with a giant blade energy. The 3 spirit transformation realm cultivators finally managed to hinder the fused blood beast a bit. Seeing this, Lang Shiqi quickly used the ghost parade and confusion movement technique to escape. Boom! The fused blood beast's 2 pitchforks smashed into the ground, creating a deep hole. Lang Shiqi's eyes were filled with intelligence. He pointed with his spirit sword and turned into 9 afterimages that stabbed out at the same time. The 9 afterimages formed a circle and each sword carried a light blue sword energy as they stabbed into the fused blood beast's lower abdomen. Puff, puff, puff. 9 small sword marks appeared on the fused blood beast's body and 9 waves of cold energy invaded it.
This was the chaotic flower-dazzling eyes that had fused with the cold sword energy. The cold energy entered the fused blood beast's body and caused it to stiffen for a moment. Ah Chen hesitated for a moment, but he immediately took out a brown cylinder. He opened it and pressed the mechanism at the end. Immediately, a black object shot into the air and landed on top of the blood beast's head. Following that, 10 sharp black short arrows suddenly shot down. However, those short arrows were not aimed at the blood beast, but at the ground around it. The black mass in the air instantly expanded and turned into a large black net that slid down, trapping the fusion blood fiend within. The fused blood beast immediately waved its arms and twisted its snake tail, but it didn't know what material the black net was made of. It was abnormally tough and didn't break. Chance. This thought appeared in everyone's mind. They all rushed forward and used their most powerful spirit techniques. Qing Yan, who hadn't made a move yet, suddenly made her fists bigger. Then her fists became extremely red like iron that had been burned for a long time. At the same time, Leng Shiqi clenched his fists and smashed them out like a tiger stepping on the waves. Chapter 124. Leng Shiqi's ferocious tiger-treading wave fist slammed into the fusion blood beast's abdomen. The yin and yang fists blasted out and finally tore a hole. Especially the internal strength that was constantly stirring its meridians and flesh. The fusion blood beast trembled in pain. At this time, in Leng Shiqi's vision, the fusion blood beast's spiritual energy was rapidly gathering at its head, condensing into a ball. At this moment, Leng Shiqi's mind flashed as if he had thought of something. At the same time, the attacks of the others fell. The fusion blood beast's injuries increased, especially the snake tail that was almost broken. The fusion blood beast suddenly burst out a bloody wave from its body. The two tridents were surrounded by a bloody light. With a chi-la sound, the black net that bound it was instantly cut into pieces. The fused blood beast waved its arms and slapped away the people who couldn't react in time. Immediately, several people died on the spot. Then, the fusion blood beast raised its body high and a large hole opened at the back of its neck. Then, a huge snake head emerged from it. The snake head opened its bloody mouth and sprayed out a large amount of green mucus. The green mucus emitted a disgusting stench, but no one cared about it. Because anyone who was sprayed by the green mucus was instantly corroded into bones. In addition, there were a few people who were only grazed a little and had small holes corroded into their bodies. What was even more frightening was that a lot of the green mucus splashed on the ground, seriously hindering their movements. Leng Shiqi suddenly shouted at this time, "This snake head is its weakness." He did not care about other people's suspicions. A longbow and several arrows suddenly appeared in his hand. He quickly knocked the bow and several sharp arrows wrapped in rich spiritual energy shot directly at the snake head. The fusion blood beast seemed to feel the threat and turned its body to block the snake head behind it. However, Leng Shiqi's arrow made a sharp turn in the air and accurately hit the snake's head. Boom! Hiss! The two heads that had fused with the blood beast let out miserable shrieks at the same time. At the same time, they kept twisting their bodies, making it impossible for anyone to get close. The fork in Oxhead's hand suddenly changed direction and smashed towards Leng Shiqi. Leng Shiqi was too close to the fused blood beast. This sudden attack caught him off guard. Even if he used Ghost Parade and Confusion footwork, he could not completely dodge it. At this critical moment, Leng Shiqi retreated and shouted in a low voice. Then his whole body showed a silvery white color, and his momentum rose by a notch. Leng Shiqi instantly activated the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile's beast essence battle pattern. In his mind, he had the flowing ink cloak on the outside and the beast chi battle pattern on the inside. In addition, his body was not weak. Even if he was hit, he would not be seriously injured. But he was wrong. It wasn't that he had misjudged the attack power of the fused blood fiend, but that he had misjudged someone. That was, blood is no different. Just as the fork was about to fall, blood is no different suddenly appeared in front of Leng Shiqi. Blood is no different raised the spear in his hand. He did not stab out, but swept it out like a stick. However, his attack was nothing in front of the fused blood fiend. The spear was split in half in an instant. The fork pierced through blood is no different's body. With blood is no different blocking. Leng Shiqi also retreated. But at this time,
His eyes were wide open and a somewhat complicated expression appeared on his face. He never thought that Blood is no different would use his own life to block an attack for him. Blood is no different? Lang Shiqi shouted these 3 words in an indescribable tone. His voice contained doubt, confusion, anger, and regret. Blood is no different smiled softly and said intermittently, "You spared my life, I will repay you with my life, it's only right, of course. Only right." Hearing these words, Lang Shiqi's mind instantly returned to the scene when he attacked Bai Qing. Blood is no different had risked his life to stop him. At that time, Lang Shiqi had asked him why he risked his life to protect Bai Qing. Blood is no different said, "He saved my life, it's only right that I repay him with my life." Lang Shiqi still remembered clearly the stubborn and proud expression on Blood is no different's face. At that time, Lang Shiqi didn't kill him not because he was soft-hearted, but because he felt a trace of admiration in his heart. On this Blood Fog Island, there were very few people who could still uphold their pride and their beliefs. Lang Shiqi admitted that he couldn't do this. At that time, Lang Shiqi even felt a bit of jealousy. He was jealous that someone was willing to die for Bai Qing. But now, there was someone who was willing to die for him. That person was Blood is no different. Ha ha ha. Lang Shiqi suddenly laughed. Only right. What a good, only right. He laughed, but his laughter was full of regret and annoyance. At this moment, Lang Shiqi regretted hiding his strength for the first time. If he had revealed his full strength from the beginning, Blood is no different would know that the Blood Beast fusion couldn't kill him. Blood is no different naturally wouldn't have sacrificed himself to save him. If Blood is no different had died at the hands of the Blood Beast fusion, or even at the hands of others, Lang Shiqi might have only felt pity. However, Blood is no different had died for him, and in vain. Bang bang. At this moment, the Blood Beast fusion unleashed its might, and the people around it were either killed or crippled. Delta Origi was bathed in blood, and Yushu collapsed to the ground. Lang Shiqi's pupils dilated. He had never felt such regret in his 2 lives. He always thought that he was a heartless person and always tried to suppress his emotions. In fact, in his heart, he had long regarded Blood as no different as a friend, Yushu as a brother, and Delta Origi as a confidant. However, he never dared to admit it. He was afraid that once he had feelings, he would be indecisive. He suddenly felt that he was even more ridiculous, and it was ridiculous that he had comforted Yushu. It turned out that he was an extremely ridiculous, heartless lover. Badump, badump. At this moment, Lang Shiqi could clearly hear his own heartbeat, and he knew his own heart. Lang Shiqi took 1 step forward, 2 steps, 3 steps. With every step he took, his figure grew taller and bigger. Every time he took a step, his muscles would bulge up a little. With every step he took, his aura increased by a notch. Roar! Finally, Lang Shiqi opened his mouth and let out a beast-like roar. At this moment, he was already as tall as an adult, and his muscles bulged. The outer layer of his white robe was torn to shreds, and his eyes were faintly flickering with blood. At this moment, Lang Shiqi actually activated the spiritual Ruin Beast King and the silver-scaled fire-armored crocodile at the same time. The rest of the people looked at Lang Shiqi in shock. Lang Shiqi's strength was far beyond their imagination. Chapter 125. Lang Shiqi, who had activated 2 Beast Origin battle runes, suddenly jumped out and smashed toward the Fusion Blood Beast like a cannonball. The Fusion Blood Beast waved its arm and swatted Lang Shiqi away like it was swatting a fly. With a bang, Lang Shiqi smashed into the wall above him. However, he was not injured at all and did not fall down. Instead, he used his chakra movement technique to stand upside down on the wall. His eyes were filled with boundless killing intent. Lang Shiqi found an opportunity and raised his spear. His body was filled with a domineering aura, and he stabbed down. The spear shook rapidly in the air and drew a huge bloody cross in the air. It crashed down with a terrifying amount of spirit force. The Fusion Blood Beast felt the danger from above and raised its head. At the same time, it swung its 2 pitchforks to meet the attack. When the spear and pitchforks collided, a terrifying shockwave suddenly exploded. Huge amounts of spirit force spread out and forced everyone to retreat. With a gotcha sound, Lang Shiqi's long spear was the first to break apart. Fortunately,
The cross spear managed to block the fusion blood beast's attack. Lang Shiqi used the force to quickly change direction in the air and landed on the back of the fusion blood beast. Following closely behind was a magnificent saber light that resembled a crescent moon. It was the half-moon light slash. And it was the half-moon light slash that Lang Shiqi used with all his strength. Meng Ming, Qing Yan, and the others immediately recognized that this was a powerful sword technique that only the Dark Crow knew. It turned out that Lang Shiqi was the Dark Crow. Qing Yan's face suddenly became pale and he felt a lingering fear in his heart. He remembered that when he gathered everyone to discuss the alliance, he had attacked Lang Shiqi. If Lang Shiqi had erupted with this level of combat power, even if he was at the spirit transformation realm, he wouldn't have been able to last more than a few moves. Lang Shiqi's half-moon light slash was aimed at the snake's head, but unexpectedly, the snake's head retreated back into its body. Lang Shiqi had no choice but to change his target at the last moment, and the blade slashed at the back of the blood beast's neck. Rip! The magnificent saber light tore open a deep wound on the neck of the fused blood beast, revealing half of its snake head. At this moment, the snake head opened its bloody mouth and spat out a stream of green mucus. It was too late for Lang Shiqi to dodge. Instead, he raised his sword to protect his heart. The 5 fingers of his other hand clenched into a fist. Instantly, an incomparably turbulent fist force smashed down brazenly like a ferocious tiger breaking the waves. At the same time, the snake head spat out green mucus onto Lang Shiqi's body. The mucus sprayed on his spirit saber and made a chi-chi sound. In a few breaths of time, a large hole appeared on the spirit saber and the green mucus adhered to the flowing ink robe. The flowing ink robe immediately lit up, but in the end, it was unable to block the green mucus. In the end, the green mucus made contact with Lang Shiqi's body. However, at this moment, Lang Shiqi's body was covered in silver scales. The scales were extremely hard and resisted the green mucus. However, because the silver scales were actually Lang Shiqi's skin, the searing pain still spread throughout his body. Lang Shiqi didn't make a sound and smashed down with the fierce tiger wave stomping fist. There was a poochie sound and the snake head was instantly shattered by the fist force. The fused blood beast's body suddenly twitched as if it was spasming. The others were still shocked by Lang Shiqi's terrifying strength, but now that there was a chance, they all attacked once more. After Lang Shiqi shattered the snake's head, he saw a fist-sized blood-red bead under the snake's head. He had a flash of inspiration. He guessed that this was the bloodly bead that Zhuo Laogue had mentioned. This was the core of the fused blood beast. Lang Shiqi's eyes were filled with endless ferocity. He took out a purple-blue bead from the system space and stuffed it into the fused blood beast's wound. That was the righteous thunder bead. It was comparable to the full power of a mid-stage spirit transformation realm cultivator, and was the bane of evil things like the fused blood beast. After throwing out the righteous thunder bead, Lang Shiqi quickly jumped off the fused blood beast's body. Immediately after, there was a rumbling sound, as if there was thunder. The sound of thunder came from the fused blood beast's body. Then more and more thunder rumbled. Bolts of purple lightning shot out and covered the fused blood beast's body. The purple lightning seemed to have a great restraining effect on the fused blood beast. The fused blood beast couldn't move and black smoke kept coming out of its body. Its bloody mouth was wide open, but it couldn't make any sound. Its flesh and blood had been almost completely destroyed by the righteous thunder bead. When Lang Shiqi saw this, he felt a bit of joy in his heart. However, he suddenly noticed something strange with his white eyes. The fused blood beast's spirit force and blood began to boil. The fused blood beast's body also began to swell a bit. Lang Shiqi knew that something was wrong and immediately shouted, "Retreat! It might self-destruct." The moment he finished speaking, everyone else immediately retreated. Yushu protected Hua Lingling and said to Lang Shiqi, "Brother Lang, come here." When Lang Shiqi saw Yushu take off a jade pendant from his waist, he immediately flashed to Yushu's side. Yushu smashed the jade pendant in his hand. Then, the jade pendant surged with spirit force and spun continuously. In an instant, it turned into a circular shield. There were strange runes on the shield. Lang Shiqi was still a bit worried behind the shield. Immediately, his spirit force surged out and he raised his arms. 5 thick earth walls rose in front of him. Right after Lang Shiqi raised the earthen wall, countless rays of blood-red light shot out from the blood-fused beast, and then its entire body exploded. Boom, boom, boom. Deafening explosions continued to sound. Waves of terrifying shockwaves mixed with the remains of the fused blood beast swept out. Leng Shiqi's 5 earth walls only lasted for 3 breaths of time before they all shattered. In the end, the shockwaves crashed into Yushu's spirit shield, causing the spirit shield to suddenly distort. In the blink of an eye, a few cracks appeared on the spirit shield. Leng Shiqi saw that the spirit shield was about to collapse. His left hand flashed and quickly gathered a large amount of cold air. After the cold air surged out, it didn't condense into a sword. Instead, it turned into an ice wall. Waves of shockwaves mixed with the remains of the fused blood beast continued to rush over. Yushu's spirit shield finally couldn't hold on and shattered into specks of spirit force. Fortunately, the shockwaves of the shockwaves weren't too big. Leng Shiqi's ice wall was finally blocked. When everything calmed down, Leng Shiqi's body finally couldn't hold on anymore. He automatically removed the beast essence battle patterns of the Spirit Ruin Beast King and the Silver Scale Fire Armored Crocodile. The moment he removed the beast essence battle patterns, he felt powerless and suddenly collapsed to the ground. He felt bursts of pain coming from his body. It was as if his bones and meridians were being torn apart. Not only that, but there were also countless small bloody marks on his body. What was worse was that both his spirit force and mental force were almost exhausted. It could be said that he didn't even have 10% of his combat strength left. Leng Shiqi quickly took out a few pills and swallowed them. At this moment, he couldn't care about the side effects. He continued to forcefully maintain the supercilious eyes and wanted to see the situation. What made him feel relieved was that the spirit force and aura of the fused blood beast were completely gone. It was truly dead. At this moment, he let out a sigh of relief. He looked around. Including the 3 of them, there were still 4 people alive. They were Delta Origi, Chen, Xiongming, and Qing Yan. At this moment, there were only 7 people left on the entire Blood Mist Island. However, just as Leng Shiqi was about to retract his eyes, the corners of his eyes suddenly twitched. He had clearly seen 7 people just now, but now there was an extra person who had appeared out of nowhere. And that person was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, he was behind one of them. Behind Hua Lingling. Chapter 126. Leng Shiqi suddenly felt a chill on his back. Just as he was about to warn her, he heard a poochie sound. A figure had strangely appeared behind Hua Lingling and a sharp dagger had already pierced her back. Puff! Hua Lingling coughed out a mouthful of blood and the vitality in her eyes quickly dissipated. At this moment, Yushu's mind went blank with a boom. Hua Lingling. Yushu's eyes instantly became bloodshot and he turned to look at the person who had attacked. Leng Shiqi also saw this person and was very surprised to find that this person was Yan Feilin. In Leng Shiqi's impression, Yan Feilin was a person with a very low sense of existence. He was like an old dog by Qing Yan's side, obeying only Qing Yan and never having his own opinions. Leng Shiqi vaguely remembered that during the battle with the fusion blood beast, Yan Feilin seemed to have been sent flying. Everyone thought he was dead. After that, Leng Shiqi's attention was focused on the fusion blood beast and he didn't pay much attention to the others. However, he never would have thought that Yan Feilin had been hiding himself the entire time. He had watched the fusion blood beast fight and waited for the dust to settle before stabbing them in the back. Was he not afraid that the fusion blood beast would kill everyone? Now that the fusion blood beast had just died, the few people who survived immediately began to fight among themselves. Yushu was extremely angry and filled with hatred. The moment he attacked, blade energy filled the sky and swept toward Yan Feilin like a torrential rain. For Yan Feilin, his target from the beginning was the Yushu clan. The reason he chose Hua Lingling was because Yushu and Leng Shiqi were both at the spirit transformation realm. Even if they were injured, Yan Feilin wasn't confident he could kill them in one blow. That was why Hua Lingling was the best target. However, when he saw Yushu's torrential blade light descending, his heart shook. Immediately after, he hurriedly moved his body and dodged those blade lights. It turned out that he had also cultivated a movement spirit technique, and it didn't look like it was a low-rank one. However, Yan Feilin didn't expect a few thick pillars to rise from the ground under his feet. Normally, these things wouldn't be able to trap him and he could break free at any time. However, right now he was under Yushu's blade energy, and a small mistake could cost him his life. Yushu and Yan Feilin's battle was only one side. After Yan Feilin's sneak attack on Hua Lingling, everyone began to move. Xiongming and Qing Yan were to attack to kill Lang Shiqi and Yushu respectively. Xiongming was very fast. He suddenly appeared before Lang Shiqi and slashed down with his two purple blades. Lang Shiqi sensed danger the moment Xiongming moved. He turned around and hid behind the ice wall from before. At the same time, he waved his hand and a purple crow appeared before him. The crow flew toward Qing Yan and stopped Qing Yan, who was charging toward Yushu. This purple crow was naturally the purple feather. In fact, not long ago, Lang Shiqi had discovered that the purple feather could be placed in the system space. However, after thinking about it, he understood that the purple feather didn't have an independent consciousness. It wasn't a living thing, so it could be placed in the system space. Ever since entering the blood-colored tower, Lang Shiqi had never used the purple feather because it was his only trump card that didn't consume spirit force. The other was of course the righteous thunder orb. It could be said that the purple feather was his last trump card. The purple feather played a key role in this moment. It bought a lot of time for Yushu. While they were fighting, something happened to Delta Origi. Delta Origi was heavily injured in the battle with the Blood Fiend. She was now covered in blood. She couldn't even stand properly and spat out a mouthful of blood. Ah Chen, who had been standing beside her, suddenly slammed his palm toward Delta Origi's head. However, a strange scene appeared. The blood that Gu San spat out did not land on the ground. Instead, it instantly condensed into a blood arrow in the air. With a whoosh, the blood arrow pierced Ah Chen's heart. Ah Chen's palm suddenly stopped. He looked at Delta Origi in disbelief and muttered, "You've been guarding against me for a long time." "That's right," Delta Origi said coldly. "Why? I'm so loyal to you. Why would you suspect me and guard against me?" Ah Chen knew that he didn't have time, but he still didn't understand. He didn't want to die without knowing why. He had joined Delta Origi ever since they established the Blood Moon. He had always followed Delta Origi and sacrificed a lot for her. He had never done anything out of line. He really couldn't understand where he had exposed himself. Delta Origi walked to his side and whispered, "You're too loyal. I won't trust someone who's so loyal on Blood Mist Island." "Haha. It's because I'm too loyal that I'll be suspected. Delta Origi, one day you'll die from your own suspicion and arrogance." Ah Chan fell to the ground weakly after saying this. The battles all happened at the same time. When Ah Chen fell, Yan Feilin was also restrained by Lang Shiqi's Hand of Earth. Yushu's blade light swallowed him up. Even though Yan Feilin had movement techniques, he still couldn't dodge. His body was covered in blade wounds and he died in the end. Lang Shiqi hid behind the ice wall. When he saw that Yushu had taken care of Yan Feilin, he felt a bit more at ease. However, in the blink of an eye, the ice wall in front of him was cut into several pieces. Two purple scimitars were right in front of him. Lang Shiqi didn't dodge. Instead, he pulled out his spirit sword and stabbed out 4 times. 2 invisible channel invading sword energies and 2 light blue frost sword energies shot out. Meng Ming swung his dual blades and shattered the frost sword energies. However, the other 2 channel invading sword energies stabbed into his lower abdomen. After the channel invading sword energies entered his body, they immediately sealed off the meridians in his abdomen. One had to know that the lower abdomen was where the Sea of Qi was located. When that area was sealed, most of Meng Ming's spirit energy was sealed. Of course, Meng Ming could still use his spirit energy to break the seal, but that would take time. Of course, Lang Shiqi wouldn't give Meng Ming time to break the seal. He raised his sword and was about to stab out when something unexpected happened. Purple Feather, who he'd sent to hold off Qing Yan, had fallen limply to the ground. Black smoke and sparks were rising from his body. Qing Yan's hands were covered in a layer of faint flames. However, he was in great pain as well. His palms were slightly charred. It seemed that he'd used some kind of secret technique to kill Purple Feather. Lang Shiqi had thought that Qing Yan was already heavily injured. Even though Purple Feather was a level lower than him, he should have been able to hold off Qing Yan. However, in this world there was no such thing. Lang Shiqi's heart skipped a beat. Purple feather wasn't sentient. In other words, it was an inanimate object. It was no different from a puppet. However, it had followed Lang Shiqi for a very long time. During the days when he cultivated alone, it was always Purple Feather that comforted him. Lang Shiqi didn't know what kind of feelings he had for Purple Feather. In any case, he was going to avenge its death. Intense killing intent flashed in his eyes. He first exchanged a glance with Yushu. Yushu nodded in tacit understanding, then swung his blade at Meng Ming. Meanwhile, Lang Shiqi walked toward Qing Yan with his sword in hand. Chapter 127. When Qing Yan saw Lang Shiqi walking over with a strong killing intent, he felt a little guilty. At this point, everyone had used up their trump cards and their spiritual force was almost depleted. It was time to fight. Unfortunately, Qing Yan's foundation as a spirit transformation realm cultivator was not stable. Also, he had personally witnessed Lang Shiqi severely injuring the fusion blood fiend. It could be said that without Lang Shiqi, they would have already died in the mouth of the fusion blood fiend. Therefore, he was not confident that he could stop Lang Shiqi. At this moment, he caught a glimpse of Delta Origi who had killed Ith Chen. An idea flashed through his mind. He quickly said, "Delta Origi, there are only 2 people left from the Yushu clan. Let's join forces to kill this person and keep the Yushu clan in check. Then we'll fight to the death." Delta Origi held the green sword with a thoughtful expression. Seeing Delta Origi's reaction, Qing Yan was happy. He knew that there was hope. He continued, "Delta Origi, if you help me kill this person, I'll take you as my master. I won't go back on my word." "Okay, but if you go back on your word, I'll make you wish you were dead," Delta Origi said coldly. Hearing Delta Origi's reply, Qing Yan was overjoyed and felt more confident. "Delta Origi." Lang Shiqi's face suddenly became a little twisted. He shouted, "Qing Yan and I are settling our grudges. Why do you have to interfere?" Delta Origi pointed at him with the green sword and said, "You can only blame yourself for being a member of the Yushu clan." After saying that, a sharp sword light burst out from the 3 bone swords and pierced straight at him. Qing Yan threw out a punch and a palm respectively. 2 blazing waves of spiritual force blasted over. Lang Shiqi was being pincered. He hesitated and decided to meet force with force. His spirit sword moved, and like a startled swan, it pierced towards the Delta Origi. Clang! Lang Shiqi and Delta Origi's swords clashed. Both of them were able to block each other's swords, and neither of them could do anything to the other. Qing Yan thought that this was an excellent opportunity. The speed of his fist and palm increased by a bit, and just as Qing Yan was about to reach him, something that shocked him happened. Lang Shiqi and Delta Origi, who were originally fighting, suddenly turned around and stabbed at him at the same time. At this moment, Qing Yan turned pale with fright. However, the distance between them was too close, and he had no way of dodging. Qing Yan had no choice but to stake everything on this one attack. The power of his fist and palm increased by 30%. However, strangely, the figures of Lang Shiqi and Delta Origi disappeared from his sight at the same time. Qing Yan's heart skipped a beat, and he knew that something was wrong. Sure enough, in the next moment, 2 swords pierced through his back and pierced through his body. It was not until he died that he realized that Blood Moon had joined forces with the Yushu clan. Sadly, he was just overjoyed that he managed to win over the Delta Origi, but in the blink of an eye, he was killed by her sword. Everyone's battle started quickly and ended quickly as well. From Yan Feilin's sneak attack on Hua Lingling to Qing Yan's death, it only took a short time. Sneak attack, alliance, betrayal, counterattack. Everything happened in a flash. After Qing Yan fell, Tong Ming, who was fighting with Yushu, felt his heart turn cold. There were only 4 of them left, and 3 of them were on the same side. The only ending that awaited him was death. Sure enough, Lang Shiqi and Delta Origi drew closer with their swords. At that moment, a buzzing sound came from the ground, and 2 5-meter-wide formations appeared. Mysterious runes flowed on the formations, but one of them was purple, and the other was golden. This sudden development caused Lang Shiqi and the others to stop. They looked at the 2 formations, and a myriad of thoughts flashed through their minds. Actually, it had been less than 10 minutes since they killed the fused demon beast. These two formations should have only appeared after the fused blood fiends had died. However, what were these two formations for? The four of them had this question in their minds. Just as they were puzzled, an old voice came from all directions. The last survivors of Blood Mist Island. These two formations are the transportation formations to leave Blood Mist Island's secret realm. However, only one of them is a true transportation formation. Make your choice. After saying this, the voice disappeared. Lang Shiqi and the others looked at each other. Hearing this, they were surprised, happy, and angry. They were happy that they had finally reached this step. They were the best of the 10,000 people, and they were only one step away from leaving Blood Mist Island. However, they were surprised that the test was still not over. There was still one last step. There was no intense struggle at this step, nor was there any scheming. There was only a choice between the two. If they made the right choice, they would live. If they made the wrong choice, they would die. This was a test of their luck. Lang Shiqi couldn't help but feel a sense of unwillingness and anger in his heart. Who knew how many bloody storms they had experienced, and how much deception they had experienced? In the end, they had to rely on luck to decide their life and death. The four of them looked more serious than the last, and they all fell into hesitation. However, Lang Shiqi immediately calmed down and kept thinking of a solution. Suddenly, Lang Shiqi's mind lit up, and he thought of a possible solution. Then his gaze fell on Xiaofan. Lang Shiqi gestured to Delta Origi, and the two of them flashed and suddenly appeared on either side of Xiaofan. Then, two spirit swords were placed on his neck. Xiaofan was completely unperturbed. He said calmly, "The winner takes all. Kill me if you want." Lang Shiqi reached out and grabbed the two purple scimitars in Xiaofan's hands. He had been coveting these for a long time. He then said in a deep voice, "I won't kill you. On the contrary, I'll give you a chance to choose between life and death." Upon hearing Lang Shiqi's words, Xiaofan immediately understood his intentions. He snorted coldly and said, "Humph, you want to use me to test which path is the right one? You're underestimating them. I have my own methods. You just have to tell me if you want to or not. If you don't want to, I won't make things difficult for you. However, you're giving up 50% of your chance of survival. Are you really willing to do that?" Lang Shiqi continued. His voice was filled with persuasion. Xiaofan didn't hesitate and immediately replied, "If you really have a way, I'll agree." Lang Shiqi smiled and said, "Very well, I'll plant a spirit technique on you later. It'll hurt a bit, so bear with it. Then, you can choose any formation you want to enter." Xiaofan nodded to show that he understood. Lang Shiqi immediately formed a spirit seal. Then, a red circle of light appeared on his palm. Within the circle of light, there was a lifelike centipede twisting. With a wave of his hand, the centipede burrowed into Xiaofan's left arm. Lang Shiqi purposely chose this place. He was afraid that the perfected centipede curse would cause the heavily injured Xiaofan to die from the pain. After the centipede curse entered his body, Xiaofan's face was filled with pain. A layer of cold sweat appeared on his forehead, but he gritted his teeth and didn't make a sound. His eyes were filled with a strong desire to live. His gaze drifted back and forth between the two formations. A short while later, he resolutely walked into the golden formation. Then, his figure disappeared. Lang Shiqi hurriedly closed his eyes to sense the centipede curse's existence. If the centipede curse was still there, it meant that Xiaofan wasn't dead. The golden formation was the path to survival. On the other hand, the purple formation was the path to survival. A few seconds later, Lang Shiqi suddenly opened his eyes. Chapter 128. In a dark hall, there were two old men in black robes, one standing and one sitting. In front of them was a huge golden spirit formation that slowly rotated, illuminating a corner of the hall. The old man who was standing was pacing back and forth, looking a little anxious, while the old man who was sitting was calm and composed. "Old Wood, can you stop for a moment? You're going to make me go blind with your pacing. You're over 200 years old. Why are you still so impatient?" The sitting old man said impatiently. The old man who was standing, the old man who the other person called Old Wood, suddenly stopped and said with a trace of anxiousness,
Old Bones, it's easy for you to say that. It's not like you don't know how much our blood clothing pavilion has paid for this matter.
Now it's finally time to wrap things up. What if no one comes out?
Old Bones stroked his long beard and said indifferently, "Those who survived to the end must have worked together to kill the blood beast.
At the very least, there should be a few people who survived. How could no one have come out?
You are overthinking.
What should we do if they all choose the path of death? Sigh, I said there was no need to do this.
Those who can survive to the end are definitely the best,"
Old Wood said hatefully.
Old Bones shook his head and said slowly,
No. Since ancient times, all the almighty beings have been people with talent, comprehension, shrewdness, will, and luck. What we need is a peerless prodigy who can lead the Bloodrobe Pavilion to break this stalemate."
The old blockhead puckered his lips and intended to say something, but right at this moment, the golden formation suddenly trembled, and then a figure appeared from within it.
It was Xiaofan. Xiaofan suddenly came here and immediately tried to look around while enduring the pain. But suddenly, an old face appeared in front of him.
That old face had an exaggerated smile as it looked at him.
Xiaofan's body shook and he quickly retreated. But he found that he couldn't move his body at all. The owner of that old face was naturally Old Wood. Old Wood saw someone finally come out and excitedly jumped over. He said kindly, "Child, what's your name? You're the best on Blood Mist Island, right?" Xiaofan's eyes flashed. At this moment, he knew he had made the right bet.
Before Meng Ming could say anything, the blood-red centipede inside his body gnawed at his meridians again, and he couldn't help but let out a muffled moan. Old Blockhead raised his eyebrows and said softly, "So you have a little plaything in your body.
Don't worry. Let me take it out for you."
Old Blockhead extended 2 fingers and was just about to take out the blood-colored centipede when the golden formation shook a few more times.
3 figures appeared one after another. Naturally, they were Lung Shiqi, Delta Origi, and Yushu.
When Old Blockhead saw 3 more people come out, his mouth was wide open.
Even Old Bones, who was sitting at the back, stood up with a swoosh sound. His eyes flickered with surprise.
Ha 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 ha.
Old Blockhead suddenly threw his head back and laughed loudly. "The heavens bless my Bloodrobe Pavilion. The heavens bless my Bloodrobe Pavilion." When Lang Shiqi sensed that the centipede curse in Xiaofan's body was still alive, he knew that the golden formation was the real way out, so he led Delta Origi and Yushu into the golden formation.
However, just as they stood there, before they could even observe their surroundings, this madly laughing old man appeared, and he was at a loss for what to do.
However, this also meant that they had finally left Blood Mist Island.
That was good.
Old Blockhead raised his hand, and a blood-red streak flew out of Xiaofan's body and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Seeing this, Lang Shiqi's heart couldn't help but skip a beat, and he couldn't help but feel scared.
If this old man had taken out the blood-red centipede as soon as he saw Xiaofan, then the 3 of them would have stepped into another path of death.
Old Blockhead continued. Very good, very good. Is there anyone behind you?" Lang Shiqi and the others all shook their heads, but the vigilance in their eyes didn't decrease at all. The old man behind them nodded in satisfaction and said, "Don't worry, you're safe now." For some reason, this old man's words seemed to have a magical power that made Lang Shiqi and the others slowly let down their guard.
"All right, since there's no one else, come with us." Old Blockhead waved his hand, and a gust of wind swept the 4 of them away.
Before Lang Shiqi and the others could react, the scenery around them quickly receded, and in the blink of an eye, they were forcefully taken to another spacious room. When they stopped, they were still a bit shaken. Lang Shiqi took 2 deep breaths before he felt better and thought to himself, "I don't know what realm these 2 old men are at. I clearly didn't feel any aura from them." This room was empty, and there was only a medium-sized pool, but the water in the pool was dark green and bubbling. It didn't look like anything good.
Old Blockhead brought them to the pool and said, "Go in."
Lang Shiqi and the others looked at Old Blockhead in confusion. "Don't look at me like that. Don't be ungrateful. The water in this pool is the ancient secret spring. It's a treasure for refining poison and cultivating poison techniques. Just a random handful of them would cause many people to fight over them." Lang Shiqi and the others. If they went in, how could they survive? Old Blockhead glanced at Old Blockhead and said, "If the ancient secret spring meets the blood sea poison, the 2 will mix and become a supreme treasure for cleansing the body and tempering the blood." What you don't know is that every trace of spirit energy you absorb on Blood Mist Island contains the blood sea poison. Hearing this, Lang Shiqi and the others were shocked. Lang Shiqi was secretly surprised. Doesn't that mean that we've already absorbed a lot of the blood sea poison in our bodies without us knowing? Although I don't know what it is, it can't be anything good. Old Blockhead said, that's right, once you enter the Ainshur secret spring, you can cleanse your body and be reborn. You must have used some improper methods to increase your strength on Blood Mist Island, right? I can take this opportunity to remove the hidden dangers for you. Lang Shiqi and the others looked at each other silently, but no one moved for a while. Old Blockhead saw this and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. Old Blockhead pulled a long face and said, "What, are you afraid that I'll trick you? Go in." He waved his hand and Lang Shiqi and the others were instantly pushed into the pool by an invisible force. With a few splashes, the four of them sank into the water. Lang Shiqi's body sank into the dark green water, and the moment he touched the water seeped into his body. He quickly looked inside himself and found that a thick blood mist had appeared in his body at some point. The blood mist and the green water intersected and suddenly transformed into little golden lights. The golden lights then merged into Lang Shiqi's sea of qi and flesh. He immediately felt the spirit energy in his body growing steadily, and his body's strength was also slowly increasing. Lang Shiqi knew that the two old men were not lying, and also understood that this was a rare opportunity. He quickly gathered his thoughts and closed his eyes to cultivate. Just as they were immersed in their cultivation, Old Bones said something. Chapter 129. Seeing Lang Shiqi's group of four enter a state of cultivation, Old Bones said, "Old Wood, aren't you in too much of a hurry? You didn't even ask for their names. You also didn't explain the situation of the blood-clad pavilion to them before throwing them in." Old Wood scratched his head awkwardly. He knew that he was too impatient, but he immediately changed the topic. "Hey, it's not too late to talk about it after they come out. By the way, Old Bones, what do you think of these children?" Old Bones pondered for a moment and said, "Excellent in every aspect." Old Wood looked at Old Bones with a bit of surprise. "I didn't expect them to receive such high praise from you. On the path of spirit cultivation, many people think that cultivation talent is the most important, but in reality, comprehension and temperament are the most important. These people were able to cultivate to the spirit transformation realm at the age of 13 or 14. It can be seen that their talents are excellent, but what I value more is their temperament. Especially when facing you and me just now, they always maintained vigilance. This is very good." Old Wood ridiculed, "It's rare to see you talk so much." Old Bones lowered his eyes and remained unmoved. Old Wood continued, "Then who do you think is the best among the four?" "These two." Old Bones pointed at two of them and said. The two he pointed at were Lang Shiqi and Delta Origi. Old Wood nodded as expected and said, "Who do you think is better?" "This girl's talent is the best I've seen in my life. It can be called a shocking talent. This youth's cultivation talent is not as good as hers, but his physical body is strong and his spiritual power has even opened a spiritual space. His future path is even wider. It can be said that each has their own merits." Old Bones said slowly. "Then who do you think will last longer?" Old Bones pondered for a moment and said, "I can't say for sure." Old Wood laughed and said, "Then let's make a bet. Let's bet on who can last longer. I heard that you recently created a black bone doppelganger. Lend it to me for a few days to study." "Humph. So it's my black bone doppelganger." Old Bones flicked his sleeves. "Old Bones, you can't say that. Let's make a bet. If I lose, I'll lend you my gold." Old Bones raised his eyelids and looked at Old Blockhead in surprise. He was naturally aware that Big Gold was the Old Blockhead's precious treasure, and it was a puppet that the Old Blockhead had spent countless painstaking efforts to create. Normally, the Old Blockhead wouldn't even let others take a look at it. Old Bones nodded. "All right, I'll bet with you." "Then I'll bet on this little girl." Old Blockhead hurriedly said as if he was afraid that Old Bones would go back on his word. Old Bones' eyelids drooped as he said, "Fine, I'll bet on this young man." Then, he sat by the pool and dozed off, while Old Blockhead began to pace back and forth. Lang Shiqi and the other three were still quietly staying in the pool, absorbing the ancient secret spring. Their auras were getting stronger and stronger. A moment later, Delta Origi's spirit energy suddenly increased, and she directly stepped into the second level of the spirit transformation realm. Following closely behind were Yushu and Xiongming, and the last to break through was Lang Shiqi. This was not the end. After about an hour, Delta Origi broke through to the third level of the spirit transformation realm. At this time, the other three were much slower, especially Lang Shiqi, who only broke through after almost 2 hours. Seeing this, Old Blockhead revealed a smile and looked at Old Bones proudly. Old Bones' eyelids were still lowered and he didn't pay attention to him. Time continued to pass, and after 6 hours, Delta Origi's cultivation had reached the fourth level of the spirit transformation realm. However, her face was a bit red and she would occasionally reveal a painful expression. Yushu and Xiongming's cultivations were stuck at the peak of the third level of the spirit transformation realm, and they were unable to break through. Moreover, their bodies were a bit red, as if they had soaked in a hot pool for a long time. The most serious thing was that their bodies were still trembling slightly. It was obvious that they were enduring great pain. However, they clenched their teeth and persevered. They knew that this was the best time to break through to the fourth level of the spirit transformation realm. If they couldn't break through now, it would take a long time in the future. At this moment, Lang Shiqi's state was a bit strange. His cultivation was also stuck at the peak of the third level of the spirit transformation realm, but his expression was very normal. There was no trace of pain on his face, and he even seemed to be enjoying it. That's right, Lang Shiqi was indeed enjoying it at this moment. The specks of light formed by the fusion of the dark erosion spring and the blood sea venom could not only cleanse his body and strengthen his foundation, but they could also rapidly increase his spirit energy, causing his cultivation to soar like a rocket. In addition, the golden specks of light continued to fuse with his bones, meridians, and flesh, tempering his body. It was a comprehensive tempering from the inside out. That's why Lang Shiqi was not in a rush to increase his cultivation. Instead, he used the 8 stones method to refine his body. At this moment, Old Wood stopped pacing back and forth, and Old Bones also stood up. Both of them looked at the 4 of them with bright eyes. Old Wood said seriously, "They are indeed worthy of coming out of the Blood Mist Island's secret realm. Just their tenacity is extraordinary. If they don't die, their future will be limitless. That brat Xiao Dao is not good at managing the sect, but his thoughts and vision are far better than ours." Originally, he thought that aside from the Delta Origi, the other 3 would have already been unable to bear the pain and left the pool. Old Bones nodded slightly, agreeing with him. Time passed very quickly, and after another half an hour, Yushu and Xiongming finally broke through to the fourth level of the spirit transformation realm. It was also at this moment that they could no longer endure the pain and jumped out of the pool at the same time. When they came out and saw that the Lang Shiqi and Delta Origi were still in the pool, they frowned. They both knew that the longer they stayed in the pool, the more benefits they would obtain, but the pain would also become more intense. They came out first, which meant that they were not as good as the Lang Shiqi and Delta Origi. However, the 2 of them didn't think too much about it. They sat down and began to consolidate their cultivation, completely ignoring the 2 old men. Old Wood and Old Bones looked at each other and saw satisfaction in each other's eyes. It was within their expectations that Yushu and Xiongming would come out of the pool first. However, they didn't expect that their first reaction after coming out of the pool was not to ask questions or be jealous. Instead, they went straight to consolidate their cultivation. This made the 2 old men think even more highly of them. Then they turned their gazes to the Lang Shiqi and Delta Origi. Their bet was still going on. Time slowly passed, and Delta Origi broke through again. She was already at the 5th level of the spirit transformation realm. However, it looked like she wouldn't be able to last much longer. Lang Shiqi also gradually broke through to the 4th level of the spirit transformation realm. Although his cultivation did not increase quickly, his condition was not bad. Only now did his face begin to turn red. Old Wood's old face became more and more gloomy. He seemed to already know the result of the bet. Not long after, Delta Origi could no longer hold on and left the pool. After Delta Origi came out, she first glanced at Lang Shiqi in surprise. Then she also began to consolidate her cultivation like Yushu and Xiongming. Old Bones looked at Lang Shiqi, who was still leisurely soaking in the pool, and said, "Old Wood, you won't go back on your word, right?" You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.